Okay, if I can get everyone to take their seats. Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Lompoc City Council meeting. This is Tuesday, July 18th. We are returning from a closed session. We are re-adjourning from a closed session. Let's see, report in closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. There were two items on the agenda. They were both discussed, but there's no reportable action.
Okay, and please rise, remove your hats for an invocation by Anita Friedman. You don't see her. Patrick, would you like to give an invocation?
Please join me. Lord God, we just thank you for the days you've given us, and thank you for the awesome blessings you have showered on our community. We just pray for your leading and your guidance in all things. We ask that you be with us in this session tonight and each and every day in our community. Your word tells us that you have selected this leadership and that they are anointed by your hand, and we just ask for that tonight, and that you give them your wisdom and guidance and strength in all things. And we just ask that your continued blessings be upon our city, on our community, and to lead and guide and protect the military nearby with Vandenberg, and for those people that stand in the gap and stand downfield, that your protection would be on them. We lift this all to you in your name, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we get going today, first of all, I need to poll the council on something. We have a relatively heavy agenda this evening, and there are two items that are not time sensitive. They are two council requests, item number 6 and item number 7. I've already talked to Councilmember Mosby. It was his request, and he would have no problem with pulling those for a future agenda. Do we have any objections from anyone on the council? No? Okay, so for everyone's information, items number 6 and item number 7 is being pulled. And those of you that may be here for item number 8, for the the consideration of termination of the MOU for the Motorsports Foundation, that has also been pulled. We will not be discussing that this evening. We'll have that on a future agenda at some future date. So items number 6, 7, and 8 are pulled from the agenda this evening.
Mr. Mayor, item number 10 also.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Okay. Okay, this meeting is adjourned. No. That was quick, wasn't it? Okay, item number 10 is pulled also. Thank you, I forgot about that. Okay, now we will move on to presentations. First is an annual report by Visit Lompoc, Inc.
I'll try to make it as fast as possible. So, my name is Paul. My name is Paul Patel. I'm president of Visit Lompoc, also doing business as Explore Lompoc. And I'm going to give a quick presentation of what we've done in the past 12 months and what we have planned in the future. Our mission is of Visit Lompoc is to grow the local tourism economy through increased visit spending in the city of Lompoc through the lodging establishments. Visit Lompoc is funded by a 2% fee that is assessed on guests that stay at the hotel, which is collected by the hotels, and then sent to the city, which the city sends it back to Visit Lompoc, and we use these funds to promote Lompoc. To date, see here are some of the marketing incentives that we've done. We've done it in print advertising, brochures, rack cards, email. We've done extensive grant and partnerships, photography, promoting merchandise, media relations, and the social media. Here are some of the advertisings that we've done: Wine Enthusiasm, Sunset, California road trips, and Southern California life. Some sample print ads that were in these different magazines that we've placed throughout the year. Usually every year we refresh our ads so they don't look the same and mundane throughout the year. Here's some of the sample digital ads. Most of these ads are online through Google and Facebook and other social media outlets. Also, when we started, we decided that we wanted to have a certain amount of rack cards and a certain amount of brochures. The one to the right was our first brochure, and then we did a collaboration with the Mural Society and came up with a Big Arts in Old Town rack card, and also we did a brochure for them with a map. And then in January, we joint ventured with the La Prisma Mission and came up with this brochure, which I believe we printed 30,000 and we're pretty much almost out of them. This is in a 6-month time. One of the things that happened here was we printed this brochure, and in January at the same time, La Prisma Mission was picked up in California Life as the cover page. I don't know if anybody saw that, but they were picked up in the magazine. Just most recently, we came up with a visitor's guide, which originally was intended to be digital, but within a month, the board and most of the hotel owners decided that this is what our guests were looking for, with a magazine that they could see, not a magazine, a guide that they can see that has all the restaurants, places to go, pretty much a one-stop stop. Most of you council members have that in a packet as an example. Same thing, we do a lot of email, direct mailings. Our list is almost triple from the time we started 3 years ago, and actually, within the last year, and it continues to grow. Grants, we partner with a lot of community organizations, and to date, we've given out about $171,000. And some of the ones this year were West Coast Flying. Just recently, we helped fund Open Streets. We've done the mural in the weekend, the Lompoc Police Car Show, and the Santa Rita Wine Association. We also did partnerships to promote the La Prisma Golf Course by doing, stay a night, stay a weekend, and golf. We also did that with the skydive, spend the night, and then you get a discounted skydive and discounted hotel stay. We also partnered with the Chamber on 2 ads. One was in Wine Enthusiast magazine, and the other one was California Visitor Guide. And some of these ads are not cheap. They're $20,000-$30,000 ads. So we try to work with other organizations by joint venturing with them. To date, we have in our library about 600 photos. We keep these pictures once the board or the marketing committee decides that these are the pictures we want. We usually buy them out because we don't want anybody to use them and have that stale, same picture in different ads. So we're always using Bottle Brand and other photographers in time, Justin Reynolds, and just continue updating our video library. Here's some of the sample images that we've used just to promote Lompoc. Very crisp, clean, vibrant pictures. We try to stay with those to, show a positive attitude to Lompoc. Some of the media, on the other big, we were picked up, around March, we were picked up by Westways magazine, and they did a article on us, and that was a AAA magazine, and that goes out to millions of subscribers. And to date, we've had over 300 press releases. This year, we've had 30 travel stories already written. West Days Magazine, Los Angeles Times. And this is more bringing awareness to Lompoc and our city and what when a person comes in to stay at a hotel or just visit, what they can do, and instead of just saying there's nothing to do here. Some of the promotion items that we have little bags that we've given each council members, but when we have organizations that go out to promote, we provide certain bags, we call it collateral material, to these organizations to, if they're at a travel show or a wine show, that for them to give this out to them, it's free of charge, so that they see where Lompoc is and it stays on their mind. Same thing, social media marketing. This is just some of the statistics. How many visitors are visiting, some of the Chrome and Pinterest and YouTube. Let's see, 2016-17, we're up about 140% on our visits to about 152,000. So within the 3 years, we've grown from 0 to 152,000. So Explore Lompoc and its board is doing a pretty good job on getting people to look at our website. Some of the statistics, bed tax revenue that we've collected has continued to go up. 2016 number is 1,794,000 rounded off. 16-17, that was projected by the city manager. We believe that it's going to be higher once the new hotel opens up, and then the Embassy Suites puts some of their rooms that were offline back online. So there is some growth in the city occupancy tax. And that's it. Any questions?
Just comment, Paul. I mean, we are so thankful for you and your group. I mean, whenever I talk to anyone, excuse me, Patrick, but I don't tell them to necessarily go to our website. I tell them to go to Explore Lompoc.
I appreciate that.
If you have not been there yet, go to Explore Lompoc. It is absolutely a fantastic website. And offer it to your friends and relatives if they want to know where you live. It's a great site, so thank you very much. And thank you for the great presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Starbuck.
Mr. Patel, real quick, what is the difference between Explore Lompoc advertising and the Chamber's advertising?
We're a nonprofit, and we're basically funded by the 2% tax. We operate independently, and our mission, like you said, is we look at it from heads and beds. We're hotels, and it's basically the hotels that look at it and saying, how can we get someone to come into Lompoc and spend a night? And that is the goal. So our advertising is more geared to getting someone to stay, because if someone stays in Lompoc, just the benefits of them, eating at a restaurant, filling up gas. I was talking to Dwayne earlier when the buses come shopping and buying Levi's. So that's where the emphasis is, and that's when the budget cuts were in the 2009, and when the state came out with the T-bid program. It was to help the hotels to bring in the advertising dollars, because most cities cut all their advertising. And it was to help the hotels, because that's where the money comes in and it gets trickled out. Someone fills up an RV or a car with $40, $50 worth of gas, there's taxes that are coming into the city. We do a lot of advertising by ourselves. Like when we did the brochures for the wine, we decided that there was no other brochures, or like when we decided to do this magazine, it's geared for our customers. And if they come in, are they going to come back? And if they're coming, we can tell them where to go, where to stay. I mean, we want to stay them at our hotels, but where to eat and what to visit, like La Prisma Mission. That mission brochure, I think the first of the year, we printed 30,000, and I just talked to him this morning. We're probably down to maybe 5,000. So we're going to go for a reprint. And we did a collaboration with them. Their budget was low. We came in, subsidized it. We don't take over. We just use our PR firm to help design a brochure, and they're very happy. And we did the same thing with the Mural Society, with the mural in the weekend. We just did something with the open street. So our advertising is different because it's geared for bringing in someone to stay at a hotel.
Councilman Osborne.
Mr. Patel, I just want to thank the organization for also having the grant program. That underwriting and support of the events that bring people to town for the weekend has really been helping some of our local events step up their game or revitalize some of their programs. So again, thank the entire organization for considering those and how valuable they are to our community. So thank you.
Yeah, and the grant program is a great program, and it's run by the committee, and we encourage, because, there's certain organizations that do a great job, but they just don't have the funding. And if they apply and they meet the criteria, our grant program, I believe, we have 200,000 that we're giving, but we don't give it away. We look at it. How is the benefit going to come back to people staying at the hotel? So we look at it, and, if they meet the criteria, we'll fund it. Thank you.
Else? Thank you, sir. All right. Okay, we're going to move on to now a quarterly report from the Lompoc Valley Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau.
Good evening, Council. So I'm here to present to you the quarter of April to June 2017, some highlights that the Chamber's been doing since then. So we have hosted a 4-part marketing series, which was free to members and only a $10 charge to non-members. And that marketing series included marketing in today's media climate, email marketing for businesses, social media, reputation versus reality, and online marketing to filling seats. So we also hold a seat on the City of Lompoc's Economic Development Committee, so update by Chelsea Cochran, who holds that seat. The EDC survey regarding food in the industrial zones received over 600 responses with overwhelming support for food in the industrial zones. Yay for that. The EVAs, which is the Economic Vitality Awards, were presented to Starbuck Lind Mortuary, Blue Sky Property Management, and Garcia Dance Studio. The Education Summit was finalized for September 13th as the date of the event. And we attended an April 21st broadband stakeholder meeting in Santa Ynez to stay up to date on what's happening with broadband in the area. Community relations with Vandenberg Air Force Base. Today I actually attended a newcomers block party, which was pretty amazing. We had a booth we actually did share with Explore Lompoc and a couple of representatives from the new Hilton Garden Inn. And it was shocking to me how many people we actually encountered that had been on base for a year and a half, 8 months, and had never been to Lompoc. So it was pretty exciting that we were out there and we were able to talk to those folks, talk about all things Lompoc, and get them to come to see our community here. I've attended several events on Vandenberg. I'm hugely into that relationship. I think it's super important. Retirement dinner for Colonel Moss, quarterly awards in May, the Governor's Military Council meeting, and then the block party again today. What I've also done recently that I don't think's been done in recent years is I submitted the 2016 Air Force Space Command Community Support Award Package for Lompoc. So if you're not familiar what that is every year the Air Force Space Command nominates 5 communities that are eligible to apply for this award, and it basically looks at the relationship that the community has with the Air Force Base and how we support them. So it's a pretty daunting task as a new person in the community, but I would rather apply than not apply, so we'll see what happens, but that was pretty exciting. Examples of the communities that were identified as eligible to apply, just so you're aware, are Arroyo, Colorado, Cocoa Beach, Florida, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Lompoc, California, of course, and San Antonio, Texas. So what an accolade that would be if we could get that award. Our Military Affairs Committee hosted a very successful 4th of July celebration in the Centennial Park, which was complete with a children's bike parade, barbecue games, bounce house, and a free patriotic concert. I was there. It was fantastic. It was such a huge success in that I think in previous years, the kids would come from the bike parade and maybe not hang around, and the committee did such a great job in having games and things for them to do. The park was full. It was a great event, so congratulations to them. We hosted our quarterly Good Morning Lompoc breakfast, offering an alternative networking option to those who are unable to attend our luncheons, and maybe they just wanted to come and have an opportunity to interact with community leaders, so that was successful. Our Leadership Lompoc Valley and Youth Leadership Lompoc Valley committees both hosted successful graduations for their classes, and the Leadership Lompoc Valley 2018 applications for this coming year's class are available online. I'm going to attend that myself. So those are definitely producing Lompoc's next community leaders. Chamber staff and volunteers attended and participated in both Spring Fest and Flower Festival, so we manned that booth, and that was great. I launched a formalized version of our Ambassador Club, so that essentially started in June. It's strengthening our volunteer corps, it adds value to the program, and it really helps us kind of build what we need in the community from a volunteer corps. We are adding an Ambassador of the Year award that is going to take place at the next annual dinner in 2018. We kicked off a very successful Old Town Market. I'm sure that everybody in this room has been out there, but if they haven't, you should. It's we started that on June 30th, the Lompoc High School Alumni Car Cruise, packed event. We have 100 vendor spaces at this event, and they're packed with a waiting list. Attendance has never been higher, and people are loving it, and they're loving coming out there. So we actually have, continuing this Friday, with the first Open Streets event in partnership with the Healthy Lompoc Coalition, offering a mile of car-free space for participation of all ages and abilities to play and exercise. So we also thank the City of Lompoc for that partnership as well, because they did sponsor the street closures. And then lastly, tomorrow night we'll be hosting our annual dinner and awards banquet at the Dick DeWee Center, and we will be once again honoring man, woman, small business excellence, and volunteer of the year. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Okay, city manager's report.
Nothing to report, Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Going to open this up for public comment on the consent calendar. This will be a public comment on the consent calendar only. Okay, seeing no one rise, this is for the consent calendar only. Okay, seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment on the consent calendar, bring it back to the council. Consent calendar consists of items that are generally considered routine and will be passed with one motion and a second, or will be voted on with one motion and a second by the council. Does any council member wish to pull an item? Councilmember Osborne.
I don't wish to pull it, but I would appreciate an explanation about item 4, just for community clarification, if possible.
Okay, is someone from Urban Forestry here? Okay,
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may,
yes,
I would like to pull the item because I'd like a more lengthy discussion on that, so.
okay. So we're going to pull item number 4, and that'll be heard just before the last oral communication, I believe it is. So we'll pull item number 4. Okay. With the one item being pulled, do I have a motion to, Councilmember Starbuck?
I'll move to accept consent calendar minus item 4.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Well, let's vote. And that passes 5-0. Okay, now we're going to go on to oral communication. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak to us for anything that this council can act on.
Hello, I'm Mrs. Gray. I'm a retired teacher, business owner, tutor, all kind of things with the children business as a 22 years. So I know the practicalities of bringing in revenue, and I recently found out the city was considering to sell the recreational marijuana. And part of the reasoning was it would bring in the revenue. So I understand, as I say, I was a CFO, and then I work with children and tutoring and so on. So about a week ago, I heard of a child, the parents may testify, or what do you call it, speak here? They may come forward, and were accidentally maybe on purpose, were given an edible, the gummy worm. This was the gummy bear with the marijuana in it. And 10 years old, and here in Lompoc, and she had an extreme reaction, had to be rushed to the hospital. And that even if it's legalized, we can't prevent that. So when it's legalized, the recreational, there's going to be more. There's going to be more marijuana. It's going to be more available. That's a no-brainer. So in it was mid-December, we went to a hotel in Sacramento within the city for a reunion. There were about 20 of us, nice hotel. And it was after the measure had passed, and people are misunderstanding and thinking that you can go ahead and start lighting up. And in our hotel, we had to move from the floor because it was so heavy. We went down, we told the manager, and he also enjoys the marijuana, and so he was kind of laid back. So we had to up the ante about the hotel. We were considering all of us leaving. And one of us spoke out quite loudly, and we moved to another floor. It was a nice hotel in Sacramento, it turned out. So your figures for the tourist industry, nobody's going to want to come here with the pot all over the place, long and short. There's a lot more information. There isn't time. We just found out about this issue, so we're going to be speaking out later. And 2 other individuals wish to also speak on the matter of the recreational. All right, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Anyone else who wants to speak, you need to come forward.
I'm Pastor Jeffrey Nelson. I'm the pastor at Peace Lutheran Church. I'm also the organizer of Love in Lompoc, which is an effort to combine or to bring together faith-based organizations, local business, and local government to improve and beautify the city of Lompoc. Our most recent project included the grounds around City Hall, and so some of the landscaping that you've seen there was done by our group. I'm also trained in chemical dependency intervention through Lutheran Social Services of Colorado, and I came to speak in opposition to approving recreational marijuana for Lompoc. You may be aware that Colorado and Washington both approved recreational marijuana in 2012, and I'd like to share with you some statistics regarding that were gleaned from organizations like the National Center for Biotechnical Information, the Police Foundation, and the National Institute for Drug Abuse. In 2014, when marijuana businesses began operating, there was a 32% increase in marijuana-related traffic deaths in just 1 year from 2013. So 32% there. Probationers aged 18 to 25 and 26 plus years testing positive for marijuana increased by 49 and 87% respectively after marijuana was legalized. High school drug-related suspensions and expulsions increased 40% from 2008, 2009 to 2013, 2014, and the vast majority of those were marijuana violations. Denver police statistics show that in summing up crime of all types in Denver, the crime rate went up almost 7% during the time after the legalization of marijuana. But crimes including such things as public drunkenness, which includes impairment from marijuana use, are up 237%, and drug violations are up 20%. There's considerable evidence that students who smoke marijuana have poorer educational outcomes than non-smoking peers, and there's also much information about the damage that medically that can happen, and is shown in Colorado by the increase in marijuana-related cases coming to the emergency rooms. I'd like to close by saying that while legalizing recreational marijuana would certainly have financial benefits to the city of Lompoc, costs due to increased traffic violations and accidents, hospitalization, and increased difficulties for school children, many other factors clearly suggest a negative financial impact on the city and on its citizens. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I have information that I can
Give it to city clerk, yeah.
review. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hatton, and I'm a retired employee from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and enjoying myself greatly and immensely, and help in Santa Barbara was helping a lot of organizations that were helping children, and that's what I like doing, and I plan to hopefully do it here in Lompoc. I'm very new to here, and so with Louise, she's now a friend of mine. I met her during a dog walk, and that's how we've met. But anyways, my concern is that I do believe that cannabis or marijuana is a gateway drug, and I know that for a fact because what happens is that the younger crowd, to them it ends up being too mundane, boring, and they would need something else to lift them up. And so what they do is they go out to the other sector of going into either cocaine or cannabis, the more serious drugs that would involve them into either ODing or death. And it does, I've been there, and things have happened to me and family members, and so I know what happens to families, children, young adults who do this. I have a disease, MS, and I'm allowed to have a medical marijuana card if I choose to do so, but I choose not to for certain reasons, what I've just given you. And so for people who have health problems, if it is to be maintained through the doctor and looked at thoroughly, on a regular basis, I don't see a problem with that. But in regards to just letting them freely do this certain drug, shall we say, it will run into problems down the road. And that's what I have to say.
Okay, well, thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Good evening, John Lane, Lompoc resident. I know you all receive tons of information. I remember. But I want to bring one thing that's come to all of you to your attention because I think maybe it's gotten lost. So you'll remember that a developer came to this council to convert what we all know as Ravenswood, I don't know the name of it today, to low-income housing. And you all said, no, we have enough, and we're working on a down payment assistance program, and we're going to get people into ownership. And then that developer went to the state of California, who said, oh, sure, go ahead. And today I was chatting with someone who lived there who's been evicted. Both of them have jobs and work, but they've been evicted so that Section 8 customers can move in because they'll pay a higher rate to the developer. Clearly, this is not a very good situation for local control, and it's about to get 100 times worse. So there's a bill in Sacramento called SB 35, and what it's going to do is to allow a developer to come to Lompoc, and there will be no local review of a low-income housing project. Now, we would all say to ourselves, oh, that's 20 or 30 units. No, it's 2 units. There will be no California Environmental Quality Act. You, I, and everyone else in Lompoc won't be able to comment on it. There will be no parking requirement if they're within a half mile of a Colt bus stop. Can you imagine a 30-unit apartment complex next to a Colt bus stop with no parking spaces? And they severely limits the city's ability to even make a zoning or design decision on the project. In other words, the builder can come here and pretty much do whatever they want, and none of us can do anything about it. So the League of Cities has asked all cities to formally oppose this. As originally written, it wasn't a bad one. It really targeted some cities that have just not put any housing in, and clearly we have put a lot in. So here are the league's documents, and I would hope this evening that 3 of you would move to put it on the agenda so that a formal position can be taken, and the city council, under the mayor's signature, can send a letter to each and every senator and each and every assemblyman, and perhaps talk about our experience with hardworking, tax-paying people being evicted, which I think is almost criminal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Next, please.
Good evening, City Council. Chuck Madsen, Director of Programming for Coast Valley Substance Abuse Treatment Centers in Santa Maria and in Lompoc. With a client population of over 850 currently, 200 of them adolescents. I've heard the discussions and the topics recently about legalizing recreational marijuana and the dispensaries and everything that goes along with allowing this in our community. I felt a desire to come to you tonight to bring up a few topics that are a reality for me, and as these decisions, or as you guys as discuss this, might want to consider. The environmental impact grows have on our community. You know, we've seen the environmental impact that it's having on Oregon and Washington with pollution, you know, our natural resources being polluted and riverbeds by the chemicals being sprayed onto the grows. The criminal aspect, which I am very highly experienced with the criminal aspect of selling and growing drugs and distributing drugs. We know Santa Barbara County, where else do we have panga boats washing up on our shore? Those individuals and those businessmen that are bringing marijuana into our county, you know, I don't think are going to be pleased by the fact that we're allowing more businesses to sell marijuana. So what I'm asking, as you make these discussions and make these regulations, to use every possible, you know, thing that you have to improve or secure, you know, the dispensaries if you allow that to happen. You know, the talk is that, you know, the federal government won't accept marijuana yet. So where are they going to put that money? You know, where are these dispensaries going to deposit that money? And the gangs of Lompoc are already talking about, you know, what's it going to take to walk into a dispensary with a gun and rob the dispensary owner of the cash that they can't deposit in a bank. And last but most importantly, and it's already been brought up, is our kids. You know, I said we have 150, 200 kids in our program. 125 of those are in our program because of marijuana. You know, the schools haven't changed their regulations on possession of marijuana. You know, the probation department still is locking up kids for possession of marijuana under the influence of marijuana. You know, if we allow our kids to have a higher access to marijuana in our homes, in our communities, then we're ultimately allowing them to be introduced to the juvenile justice system, you know, to marijuana, whether it is a gateway drug or it isn't. You know, I have kids in program that will be willing to go to juvenile hall than to quit marijuana. So, you know, you'll have those that say that marijuana isn't addicting. Well, they're not willing to quit. So I just ask that you use every resource possible to regulate and to secure whatever your decision is regarding marijuana in Lompoc.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, thank you. Next, please.
My name is Ben Kiblinger. I'm a local Lompoc business owner. I'm also a member of the Crown Point HOA board, and I'm also a parent of 2 Lompoc Unified School District students. I don't have any fears about marijuana. It's not what I came here to talk about, but it seems to be an important topic. You know, I watched the movie Reefer Madness a couple weeks ago that was designed to make everybody afraid of the drug, you know, some years ago, and I wasn't, you know, too impressed. Yeah, I went to UCSB. I studied statistics, and you know, I can tell you that, you know, without having numbers attached to those statistics, they're not worth a lot. You know, going, you know, to having a 32% increase could be, you know, going from 3 deaths to 4 deaths from marijuana, when in fact most people die from drunk driving. So, with that, let's not, abandon an opportunity for Lompoc, with cultivation without, thoroughly studying what the opportunity is. I was a law and society major at UCSB, and the criminalization of that naturally grown product, led to, pharmaceuticals, causing a lot of harm. My mother-in-law died here in Lompoc a year after I moved here because of an OxyContin overdose, which is a painkiller. If marijuana didn't have such a stigma attached to it, put on it by some people, she might still be alive today. All right, so with that, what I really came here to talk about is that the Bodger Field that's across the street from where I live, which is property 5 that may be annexed to the city of Lompoc. I know a decision a year ago was made after a lot of hard thinking. Dwayne Homdahl said Lompoc needs some higher value housing that's low density, very low density. And my concern is that annexation was made without any specific proposal tied to it. And for the benefit of all the homeowners that live around that area, I would ask that the city council make that annexation contingent to that area being for low density housing or very low density housing. And I would also ask Lompoc City Council to take a look at what is the tax opportunity if a portion of those greenhouses that are far away from the school and residential, if they're actually used for cultivation, like Sonoma County is doing, where they're charging upwards of 8% tax on it and making millions of dollars.
Thank you, sir. Just for those of you in the back, there are a few seats up here front, and then the second and third row over here, there's a few seats available if you're interested.
Good evening, Council. Mark Ashamala, mental health and drug addiction counselor. I've also been working on bringing a medical dispensary to Lompoc for over a year now. Some great points brought up by this last gentleman and obviously the people that are opposing it. There are some misconceptions. I believe that California won't be passing the recreational 2018. It's a long way off. They still have a lot of laws. What I'm pushing for and what I'm hoping that we do in the next council meetings is get a medical dispensary. It is a choice whether you want to take it or not, but there are other clients that do need it and use it, on a sparingly basis. The cultivation that you just talked about in those greenhouses are directly across the street from a school, so they are null and void. They will not be used for cannabis growing. That is one of the stipulants that will be put in California laws. As a dispensary owner, I'm hoping to be, we are going to go by the laws, by the books, working with the community, involved in the community. I'm already been doing this for a year now and trying to work with everyone and trying to bring light to the misconceptions, trying to educate yourselves, myself also at the same time. There is a need for it. Recreational, again, I have 4 children too. The point when we make about the children is this is a 21 and over law. If there's lots of things that our children are exposed to that we can't, we don't want to blame the gun or the drug or the alcohol. We have to blame the source, the person that hasn't taught them. If you haven't taught your children right or wrong, then you should go back and maybe. And again, this is a community effort, so we all have to do that. And as a dispensary owner, I hope to improve the education of the community on the good parts of cannabis and the dangers, especially to our children. Again, I don't believe it's gateway drug, or it could be, but not as much as alcohol. And we saw what happened at the beginning of our Lompoc's history when we went and we're a dry community. It almost bankrupted us, and again, we can look at this at a very professional level and take it to another level. And regulate it and take it away from the drug dealers. And there is plenty of pot dealers out there. I have people that are on heroin and methamphetamine that I want to get off and onto CBDs. And I dealt with a heroin overdose this morning. So we have that going on in our town. And to be spending this much time on medicinals or recreational, we have lots of other things to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one rise, we're going to close oral communication. Again, there are a few seats available up front if any of you in the back that are standing. Okay, we're going to go on to public hearing item number 5. It's a public hearing of the City Council consideration of an application for adjustment to the city's sphere of influence and annexation of properties located along Bailey Avenue. Planning Manager Lucille Breeze.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. As the mayor described, we will be discussing this evening council direction regarding a request for annexation for 2 properties within the Bailey Avenue corridor. Also, acceptance of addendum number 3 to a previously certified environmental impact report, and approval to commence the annexation process for the Santa Barbara Local Agency Formation Committee. The council is being asked to hold a public hearing, consider the material presented in the staff report, accept addendum number 3 to the general plan update environmental impact report, accept the fiscal impact study dated June 23rd, prepared for the project by Stanley Hoffman and Associates in compliance with the land use element of the general plan, and adopt resolution number 6013/17, directing staff to proceed with the annexation application to LAFCO or to provide alternative direction. Your staff report highlights the background of this request, which was received by the city in December of 2015. The council heard the item first on April 5th of 2016, and there was an adjustment to the original request that occurred in June of 2016, which separated the previously submitted development plan and just requested that the city go forward with the process for boundary modifications and sphere of influence through LAFCO. The city has worked with the applicants, and as the background shows, we have prepared the necessary information to bring forward to council. The proposed project is 2 separate areas of the Bailey Avenue corridor, the northern area, which is approximately 40 acres just south of North Avenue, and the southern area, which is commonly known as the Bodger property, is a little over 100 acres, and that's located just south of Ocean Avenue. In any annexation request, the city is the applicant, and the city would be taking the application forward if the council chooses to move in that direction. The applicant, however, is responsible for all the costs associated with that, including staff and attorney time, and any fees either required by LAFCO, any consultants' additional studies that would be required would be the responsibility of the applicant. The city would not enter any contracts without those fees being in place. The 2030 general plan requires that an applicant who is requesting annexation will provide a fiscal analysis report, and staff has worked with the applicant and their preparer regarding a fiscal analysis, which is included also for council consideration as part of this staff report. We have prepared for you an addendum to the general plan environmental impact report as the council directed. That addendum was prepared by Rincon Consultants, who also prepared our general plan amendment. The addendum found no new or more severe environmental impacts beyond those disclosed in the final EIR for the general plan. This covers only the annexation. If the annexation were to proceed to LAFCO and was approved, any development that would come forward would then potentially require the annexation, or I'm sorry, the environmental review. At this point, we have not done any analysis of anything beyond what is just in the existing general plan. That is what would be taken forward to the LAFCO as part of the application. The fiscal analysis is in your report, as I noted, and financial staff has had, and city staff have had discussions with Mr. Stanley Hoffman, who prepared the report, and believe that the report is in conformance with the technical requirements of the 2030 general plan. Further analysis would likely be necessary if if a project were to come in, because right now the analysis that is done is just on the base of the general plan, which is low density and very low density. As I noted, the applicant would be paying for any of the fees required and the staff time to process the application. The council did receive, as supplemental information, 2 letters, one from the Citizens Planning Association, signed by Mary Ellen Brooks, and a second one from SB Can, signed by Ken Howe, Executive Director. So that's the supplemental information that was provided, and it will be available on the city website for the public to view. So that completes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions from Ms. Breeze? Is the applicant, would they like to say a few words? Just as a reminder, excuse me, sir, just one second. As a reminder, some of you are coming in late. Just to let you know, if you're here for items number 6, 7, 8, and 10, they have all been pulled. So if you're here for those items, they've been pulled for a future meeting. Okay? Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm Tom Figg. I'm representing the proponents. That is the Bodger piece on the south end and the Bailey on the north end. We're merely carrying out what you directed staff to do about 1.5 years ago. It's been an adventure. We've had some challenges, and we've worked through those with your staff, requiring a fiscal impact report as well as a supplemental environmental analysis. So we're here really to carry out what you already directed. The subtlety here is that we're simply carrying out what you've already decided, both through the general plan, the 2030 general plan. This simply is consistent with what you've already dictated in terms of land use and the ultimate boundaries of your urban limits. This is fully compliant with what you've already directed. So we're not here to debate the project. We're here to get that final authorization to proceed to LAFCO. I heard that there was supplemental material. I had provided a resolution with some changes that I thought would be helpful because it declares how this proposed annexation squares up with the policies of the city. And I don't know if that was made available to the council, was it not?
We did not provide any additional information. Mr. Fig rewrote a portion of the resolution that was presented to the council. I do have a copy we can provide to you if you would like to see it.
That's unfortunate. I think it would be helpful. It clarifies, it connects the dots, so to speak, in terms of compliance with your urban limit boundaries, the fact that the environmental analysis has concluded that there is no new information that wasn't already considered by the City Council as part of the general plan adoption process. The fiscal impact report shows a positive impact for both the county and the city's benefit. We think that those are important findings that should be declared as part of your resolution. We also are hoping that you will support, not just authorize, the filing of this annexation application, and to basically give direction back to staff to fulfill the mandate of the City Council so that we can expect a timely filing to occur and to be consistent with your desires. So I'm sorry that you weren't able to get that information. We only today received the two letters that were just introduced earlier, so I'm surprised that you didn't get the resolution. I'm sorry for that, but I would ask that perhaps your staff make copies available to you. I don't want to hold up the proceedings, but I think it is important that you declare as part of that resolution some of these findings that are, I think that staff kind of glossed upon those in their staff report, but this really solidifies how this project lines up with your policies. So I would ask that you consider that. I'm sorry for the awkwardness that you didn't receive the red line copy. I do have a copy myself, and I'll be glad to give it to your clerk if there's the opportunity for you to pass it around. Doesn't change the outcome, but it clarifies, again, how this project squares up with policies you've already adopted. With that, we do have the financial consultant here. If you have any questions regarding the fiscal report, the environmental work was done under the direction of your staff. And then we also have the applicant, the owner's representatives here as well. So we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Ms. Breeze, I guess to be fair to the applicant, I think it'd be appropriate that we make some copies and get a copy of your memo or whatever it is to the council probably sooner than later, so we can have a chance to take a look at that before we deliberate. So,
thank you very much.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Councilman
Mr.
Vega.
Fig, it sounds like you've done a lot of work and you guys have done your due diligence. At what point and at what time frame was your work completed, and how long have you been waiting since you've completed all the items that have been asked by staff for us to?
Well, it was April, I believe, last year when you directed staff to package the proposal to get it in a position for submittal to LAFCO. We had to do additional work that wasn't expected, but we did satisfy what staff requested. We've had several versions of a fiscal impact report, and that had to be revised to meet the requirements of staff. We also didn't believe that any further environmental analysis was required because we're not changing anything from what the general plan already says. But we did adhere to their request, and that was prepared, and it added some time and expense to the process, but we've accepted that responsibility and we're ready to move forward.
So it's been
over a year.
Over a year that you guys have completed
just to
your
get it to the
analysis.
point of submittal. But
Okay.
I mean, of course, this whole adventure has been several years before, including the general plan process that ultimately decided what the urban limit boundaries would be for this area.
And sir, my concern is that we've already given direction to move forward with this project, and I'm just wondering about the timing and why it's taken so long to get to this point. So thank
Well,
you.
we certainly don't want to cause any friction with your staff. But yes, there's been some dialogue And we haven't always agreed with the conclusions or the direction that staff has given us, but we have complied. So that's the best I can say at this point.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Okay, Ms. Breeze, anything else from you?
Yes, I would just like to note, the information that I handed to you is a red line copy, which is the page 2 of your resolution. That red line copy was the additional text that Mr. Fig suggested be added to the resolution. Staff has reviewed that, and unfortunately I didn't get in until late in the day, so I just marked in purple the changes that staff would be in agreement with, the council making those findings, and where there are a couple of deletions where we would not be in agreement with it. Basically, we could go, if you look at section 4 of what Mr. Fig has suggested, he's saying, based on substantial evidence in the record, the City Council does hereby declare that Bailey Avenue Annexation Number 76, boundary adjustment, A, conforms with all policies of the current adopted Lompoc 2030 General Plan. And what we would suggest as a revision would be conforms with all the relevant technical requirements of the current adopted Lompoc 2030 General Plan. We would agree with B and C and would state that having D, we don't know what the actual fiscal impact benefits to the city and the county until we've gone through the actual negotiation with the county regarding that. So we would recommend at this time that D not be included as a finding from the council. Under section 5, based on the findings and declarations set forth, the city council, we would just suggest direct staff as follows. A is the city manager is directed to prepare, execute, and submit all required LAFCO application materials. B, all fees associated with the boundary adjustments as prescribed by LAFCO, and we would include and the city, which will then cover, although the applicant has agreed to all the costs, that would put that statement into the resolution. And then as C, the foregoing actions shall be accomplished in a reasonably timely manner, and leave off the rest of the sentence. So those would be the recommendations that staff would make to adjust the resolution, if that is what the council would like to see.
Any questions for Ms. Breeze on that?
Ms. Breeze, has this process moved forward in a timely manner in your opinion? Or has there been a delay because of one circumstance or another? I'm just wondering why it took so long to get to here.
In the background, Councilmember Vega, we do show the time steps that were taken. And yes, I believe it was in a timely manner. There were events, as Mr. Fig indicated, where there were discussions between the city and the applicant and regarding various environmental impact issues or financial issues. We were directed by council in April to move forward with the appropriate environmental document. The city felt that the most appropriate environmental document would be an initial study to look at whether there actually were impacts. That was commissioned by RINCON and completed. Those dates are in your staff report. We then moved forward as a result of that initial study to prepare the addendum. So each step was taken in a timely manner.
I got you. And I think one of my other questions were, any letters of opposition or anybody that's against the annexation process, has this caused any delays in the process moving forward as far as any opposition that you've received?
No, the only information that we've received We received these two letters just today, or yesterday or today. These are very recent letters that they were well after the preparation of the staff report, so we provided them to the council as soon as we could.
Yeah, I got you again. Yeah, thank you so much.
Councilor Starbuck.
Just a little question here on 5C. Why would you add reasonably in there?
Because we're going to be in a reasonably timely manner, just.
So there's a
It's a
difference between a
descriptor.
reasonably and timely then there. It just seemed a little odd to me. Mr. Figg, this is the first you've seen of the pen and ink changes to your submitted resolution. Do you have any qualms with what is on this resolution here?
Thank you for asking. That's why I offered the language, is that it's this kind of watering down of intent that we would like to solidify so that staff has a clear direction and intent of what the council wants to see done. Technical requirements rather than policies, what does that mean? You have policies in the general plan, and this annexation squares up to those policies, so why change it to technical requirements? Fiscal impact. We did the report that was asked of staff. It's been reviewed by your financial staff, and it concludes that this will result in a positive outcome. Now, if we want to, we're not here to negotiate with the county. That's really a function that the city will engage in. But the point being is that the project will result in a positive fiscal impact. What's wrong with item D? If you want to say for the benefit of nobody, fine, but the reality is you have a positive fiscal impact. And I think that's an important finding. After all, we had to spend a good bit of time and money developing that analysis. Shouldn't we declare what the outcome is? So I'm a little concerned. Why avoid the very facts that we've been asked to provide? I think an important part in Section 5 is to express your feelings about this annexation. Are you in support of the application? Not simply saying, staff, we're authorizing you to file, but are you in agreement that this lines up with your general plan and therefore you support the application? I think that's an important message to send to your staff so that we can proceed in a timely way. If that kind of direction is not given, look where we are. It took us almost, year and several months to simply carry out your directive from April of last year. We think it's important you send a message to your staff so that everybody has an understanding that we're marching to your drum, not staff proceeding on their own independently. So I guess the thrust of this is that I would like you to consider the changes that we've offered that really puts on record your feelings about this project. And again, we're not talking about physical development. We're not talking about changing the underlying land use designation for the property. We're talking about boundary lines that are consistent with your general plan. That's all we're asking.
Anything else?
I'd like to go back to staff real quick on this. Mr. Figg did make a point here on 4A. What are the technical requirements vice the policies? The general plan is an overall guiding document. The policies are in the general plan.
Mr. Mayor, if I may respond to that. The staff, your financial staff has reviewed the fiscal impact report, and if you look under fiscal impact in your staff report, what we did is we took the language that's used in the analysis that the staff has done and put it into the resolution because we didn't think it was appropriate to make some other declaration than what the staff has indicated in the fiscal impact report.
Is that 4D? I was referring to 4A.
There is, 4A is what I was referring to.
Okay.
And 4D isn't anywhere in the staff report.
Right.
So that's why we took this 4D out. We added the technical requirements language to 4A because that's what's in your staff report from your fiscal department, your finance department. And we took out D because there isn't anything in the staff report that says that.
Okay, so relevant policies are relevant technical requirements, and it's almost like a play on words here, I think.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Breeze. We'll open this up for public comment. And from the public. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It just seems odd to me that one of the reasons it took extra time to get to you was the requirement to do this additional fiscal analysis, and yet we're not willing to state what was concluded as a result of that work, the time and the money that we spent at your staff's direction. And we're not going to say what the report says, which is there will be a positive fiscal impact. You go ahead and strike out city and county, because we don't know how that pie is going to be divided up. But the reality is it's a positive fiscal impact. You've been asked to accept the fiscal report. All I'm suggesting is that you include in your resolution the findings that came from that report. And so I'm perplexed as to why there's a fear factor to declare that which you asked us to perform. I think it's helpful for the public. Certainly it would be helpful to LAFCO to be able to see these findings very succinct in your resolution. So I'm perplexed as to why there's a hesitation to do what's been done.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to get into a debate. I guess I'll wait until you're ready to say you're not going to take any more public comment before I give more input.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, say that again?
I don't want to get into a debate.
Sure.
So I'll wait until you're sure you're done with getting public comment, and then I'll make my comments.
Okay. We are going to open up public comment right now. Public, come forward.
Okay, good evening, council members. My name is Mary Ellen Brooks. I live in Vandenberg Village, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Citizens Planning Association and our North County Land Use Review Group. Citizens Planning has monitored this proposal for the annexation of Bailey Avenue for almost 10 years. I don't want to go into merits of the project. That'll be done at a different time. And my concerns are more focused on process, and I think I'm hearing a little bit of that right now. Our group only got to see the addendum, I believe it was Thursday. I did speak to staff. I want to thank city staff for being very helpful to me today to make sure I had my information correct. But the 67-page addendum was published, I believe, midweek last week. We did read that staff has determined that according to the CEQA guidelines, this addendum did not require any additional review because it only contains minor revisions. After going through the 67 pages very quickly, I think we would disagree with that. We noticed that the project description is very different from at least the original project description that we studied many years ago. The new proposal now includes an industrial component. I don't know what that is, and I don't believe that was in any part of the original project. The low-density housing is also, I'd say, a new concept because the housing that was proposed originally, I mean, we were looking at, I believe, hundreds of homes. And now we're looking at a lower density, which is fine, but again, that's something that LAFCO will take up. We were also concerned about the fragmented nature of the new proposal. Instead of the 5 or 6 parcels, we're now looking at one in the very north and then one in the very south. I think also that some review should be done because of some of the new policies that have come down from the state and from the county. I mentioned them in my letter, the sustainable management for water retention, also county buffer policies. I'm also looking at the intensification of agriculture that has gone on since this was first proposed. And I believe with the new cooling complex and just an intensification of agriculture west of the city, that had to be reviewed. I'm hearing now tonight there is some questions about the fiscal analysis. Our group also really feels that this needs to be considered. We hope that you will choose to continue this item tonight so that could get more public and council review. We don't know why it didn't go back to the Planning Commission, but I believe staff has explained it.
I'll need you to wrap up now.
And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Scott Summers, resident of Lompoc. I live in the Crown Point development. I am vice president of the HOA, and I've been monitoring this development of the Bailey specific plan for, again, the last 10 years or so. So one thing that our people in where we live are very concerned about is there's nothing in that plan about doubling the width of Olive Avenue. That road is got extremely high traffic because of the landfill, because of the Megalito grade school, and for the residents that are there already. And there's no allowance made for widening that road, and that is unacceptable. That road must be doubled in width if you are considering putting more housing on the Bodger property. So another thing I'd like to say is, like the last lady said, I had a heck of a time trying to find out what was planned on that land since the first proposal, because I think some of the difficulty that they ran into was when they had Rincon Associates debut that plan here on October 28th, 2008. I was here, and so were many people from my development. And on that grand plan, on the Bodger property, there was a mix of medium, low density, high density housing, a liquor store, a little park next to the liquor store. What a vagrant paradise that would be. And we were very upset about that. And so apparently now it is changed to all low density and very low density housing. So if this plan goes forward, I hope you stick with that, in addition to placing a demand on widening Olive Avenue, because that needs to happen. And so when LAFCO comes back and places demands on you for changing the mix of density of housing, I hope you stick to your guns with the low density and the very low density housing. And you know, this city was talking about going bankrupt recently. Well, you need to attract people to this city that can contribute more to your tax base. And those are people, that's not just the visitors that come here and spend tourist money, but it's the people that spend money 365 days a year. And those kind of housing is what will attract those people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please. I thank you for your enthusiasm, but we'll avoid that. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Lingle and council members. I'm Ken Huff, representing the Santa Barbara County Action Network, or SBCAN. I'm a resident of Santa Maria, but I'm representing the membership of our countywide nonprofit. For 15 years, SBCAN has worked to promote social and economic justice, preserve environmental and agricultural resources, and help create sustainable communities. Yesterday, you received a letter from me urging your council to not accept the addendum number 3 to the EIR or the fiscal impact study and to not adopt the resolution initiating the sphere adjustment and annexation. In my letter, I referenced the letter submitted to you on our behalf in March of 2013 by the Environmental Defense Center. And that letter made sound arguments that I'm not going to repeat today about the value of the prime soils in the Bailey Corridor. That letter of 4 years ago and my letter yesterday point out a curious omission in your staff report, both the one 4 years ago and the one before you right now, and that has to do with LAFCO. LAFCO's role, you all know it, maybe someone in the audience doesn't, but is to set the boundaries of cities and special districts, and their approval is needed if a city is to annex an area. Well, the staff reports, both then and now, fail to disclose that inclusion of the Bailey Avenue corridor within the city's sphere, a precursor to annexation, has already been rejected by LAFCO. That was in 1999. And that decision formally defined the Bailey Avenue area as falling outside of the city's sphere. And it seems just an important thing to have on the table that was done then. So why would it be different now? It's not clear to me why anyone would expect LAFCO to make a different decision now, 18 years later. And with agriculture being the top industry in our county, the prime soils are as valuable as ever, and they can't be replaced. The staff reports 4 years ago and today also don't mention the settlement agreement between SB and Lompoc. And it had put certain obligations on the city, and that addendum is quite long, and I haven't had a chance to review it carefully. At the very least, we think you should delay the action and allow the public a reasonable amount of time to review and assess the adequacy of that lengthy addendum. Better still, we urge you to recognize that this area is just as unsuitable now as it was when LAFCO made their decision before. The city's claim that building on prime farmland is necessary to meet specific demand for new housing, we don't believe is supported by the evidence provided. So we urge the council to, at long last, formally recognize that this corridor does not meet statutory criteria for inclusion in your sphere or for further consideration for annexation. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for an explanation of why I don't like people to applaud or cheer, we want to respect all the speakers. So if you agree with someone and don't agree with someone else, just keep it to yourself, and we'll be respectful of all speakers. So, but thank you for your enthusiasm. Okay, next speaker.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Annalena Van Dyke. I'm the president of the Lompoc Valley Association of Realtors. I don't think I have to tell you that we have a huge housing crisis here in Lompoc. We have not enough homes to go around for the families that need them. I'm watching communities around us flourish. Buellton, Goleta, Santa Maria. Those communities have all been pro-housing. And I think that we need to move forward with this, and we need to do it right now. I'm asking that you accept addendum number 3. I'm asking that you accept the fiscal impact study and adopt resolution number 6013. I ask that you move in favor of this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, please. Okay, seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment. Oops.
Yeah, Council, Dwayne Holmdahl, citizen of Lompoc Valley. It's been interesting. I wasn't going to get a talk, but I really appreciate the last person making a comment. We do need housing. And all I hear is that the city's holding things up here and there. They can't get it down, go down the road. We need houses. Last I heard, we didn't have more than 34 that were for sale. There may be more or less. But you've got to get this stuff on the road and get it going down the road. Budgers and that property, we looked at it over a year ago, said, let's go ahead and finish the project, let's get it done. Bailey Avenue wasn't something that we, the council, originally started liking the idea of it, but you got to thank Art Hibbets and Bob Hedlund supervisor and planning commissioner for stopping us going to the east, and that made us go into the prime agriculture ground in the back. So I'd love to see this council take it upon themselves now and get this project going, get some houses, because we do need houses, but everybody around us. But it's interesting, we got somebody from Santa Maria telling Lompoc what to do. We got somebody from Vandenberg Village telling us what to do, and they won't even let us look at annexation of Vandenberg Village. So it'd be nice that Lompoc stand up for itself and make its own decision.
Thank you, sir.
Maria Genega, citizen of Lompoc. Good evening. I wasn't going to come up here, but then I just recalled I was interviewed a couple of years ago by the company that the city hired to talk about and get an input on the general plan. And I received a copy of the general plan, and I was very concerned at the fact that Lompoc is still being viewed as an agriculture community. And it's great to have, I'm not against agriculture, but I am against the low wages that come along with agriculture. I don't know if you're aware, there's many buses in our cities parked in the local hotels. Those are workers coming from out of the country that are taking over the agriculture employment from our local residents. I have talked to people I know that work in the agriculture business. Some of them have been laid off because they will question their bosses and say, hey, why aren't you paying us more? Why do you have to bring people from out of the country? If you just paid us a little higher wages, you wouldn't have to bring people. Their response was, if you don't like it, you don't have to come and work. So agriculture, I think we need to put more value in the sense of the worker and the wages, because like a gentleman said, we need people, in order to make our city more successful economically, we need people to earn higher wages, spend their money here, and also be able to bring tourism into our community and be able to offer more things to do. But hearing people come from SB Can and from other places saying we need to protect our agriculture fields, I think it's time that we look at the overall picture, both economically as well as what's beneficial for our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, folks at home. You've had a lot of perspectives tonight on this topic. Bringing mine as a local business owner and a citizen resident of Lompoc. We just bought a house in November of last year, but there was not much on the market at the time. I think we got very lucky with our situation. We happened to find a home for the right price at the right time. There was many other offers. I just think we got really lucky. But people that are in my wife and I situation that may be looking for the type of housing that this project could provide may not be as lucky as we are, and they may not be able to move to this town and spend their money here. And there's been a lot of different perspectives tonight. I agree with a lot of the ones saying that we need people here that are going to help contribute to this economy. As a local business owner, the more customers, the better, right? We can't thank Lompoc enough for helping our business grow the way it has in the last 2 years. But if our residential homes and our family-sized homes aren't growing in numbers, we will stagnate at some point. We can only have so many customers, but we need more family homes. And the reading I've done for this proposal, it seems that at one point it was planned for some high density, and then that was pulled, and now it is low or very low density residential. I think my only thing, I'm in support of this proposal with the condition that we try to stick to the low density or very low density residential housing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jordan Olson. I'm a resident of Lompoc. I live in Crown Point, which is right next to the Bailey, or the proposed Bailey Annex. I do agree that Lompoc maybe does need some more low-density housing. I just want to express my concern as a father of 3 young children. We live right near Olive Avenue, and it is very congested, as one of the previous speakers noted. They use Olive and South Z Street as a turnabout to drop their kids off at Miguelito Elementary School in the morning. And if there is any development in that Bodger area, that I think definitely a 4-lane road would be, a minimum. I also want to point out the need for open spaces, and I'd like you to consider the parks. I know there's some open space on South V and Olive, and it was about a year, maybe 2 years ago. It was very nice, decomposed granite and some wood and this and that, and it's totally overrun with weeds, and this is like 2 years later. So if somebody's going to develop this property, I know in the proposal it said that there may be an HOA, and they would likely be responsible for maintenance of a bike path or whatever the case may be. But our experience with that open space and the closest park, which is Westvale Park is totally overrun with weeds. And I know we've had to call the Parks Department just to get that place to be at a usable condition. The slides have been broken. So again, if there is going to be development, I hope you guys will consider making it some formal requirement for the developer to provide open space or park area and maintain that space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Last call. Okay, we're going to close public comment on this. Bring it back to the council. Oh, yes, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. The comment I'm addressing is whether or not the council should make a declaration regarding the fiscal impact report. My recommendation to you is the fiscal impact report is a document that speaks for itself. You don't have to say what it says what it says. And you have your professional staff who have reviewed it and didn't come to a conclusion specifically as outlined in this section D. So I would recommend that you not include language that says you are declaring that it provides the evidence to saying that it does provide, and let it speak for itself, because it's going to be part of the packet that goes to LAFCO. The fiscal impact report will be included, and so LAFCO will have it. You don't need to make a comment on what it says, because it says what it says.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now bring it back to council. Councilmember Mosby.
If I can, to the city attorney. In the red line section, section 5, we're proclaiming our support. If we pass this motion, wouldn't that basically already do that?
Right. You don't need to say that either, because you're obviously passing the resolution.
Right. And then on C, 5C, again, the reasonably and the timely manner is, what do you see they're both kind of the same word, are they not?
If I was going to get rid of one of those words, I'd get rid of the timely, because I would be concerned, based on my experience with, and I don't mean to be pejorative, but because of some of the comments that were said tonight, and I know the facts that happened because I was part of them, the staff was not delaying this project. There was good faith differences of opinion as to what the attorney for the developer thought was necessary and what I, as your legal counsel, thought was necessary. Ultimately, the developer's attorney agreed, apparently, because they did what it was we had been saying from the beginning to do. And each time we made a comment, they would hem and haw about it, but then eventually they would do what we had suggested they do. I'm not saying they wanted to do it, but they did it. So I'm concerned with any words in here that I could see them using to say, you're not doing it timely because da-da-da. So I thought it was helpful to put the word reasonable so that everyone would be given the rule of reason and people may relate better to each other that way.
I just see that both those words as led to interpretation. You know, a missile launch to the moon is timely, 10 years, right? We did that, right? Reasonable? I mean, like I said, they both set a line of interpretation, which you might deem reasonable, somebody else might not. What you deem timely, or I deem timely, someone else might not. So they're kind of one and the same, I think, as well on there, but I got you. I just wanted to, thank you.
Councilmember Vega.
Mr. Benoni, how would you recommend us move, if this resolution moves forward, to direct staff to move forward in a more expedient manner so that it's just not put on the back burner and just freewheeling, so to speak? So do you have any recommendation on verbiage on how we can do that to hold staff accountable for moving this thing forward, or put some sort of a priority on it should it prevail? I know you want to put reasonably and timely, but you don't want to put any teeth in it.
Councilmember Vega, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but your comments are based on an assumption that the city staff did something to delay this project, and that's not factually true. The city staff didn't do anything to delay this project. The thing delayed, there were several things that happened. One was the developer decided to change the application. The application came in with a certain kind of development, then the applicant decided to change the application, so we had to go through another review of how we were going to deal with that. When the first application came in, we asked for them to prepare what CEQA requires, which is called an initial study. They objected to doing that. Eventually they did it, agreed to do it, agreed to pay for doing it. We had our consultant do that. The initial study indicated we needed to do an addendum. We went through a couple of rounds of whether or not they were going to be willing to pay for the addendum, but they did pay for the addendum, and it was done. The fiscal impact study was done, and the language in the fiscal impact study that we received may have been similar to what has been done in the past, but when you look at your general plan, it didn't comply with the general plan. So we said we need to have a revised fiscal impact. We went through some negotiations on that, and eventually we got the corrected fiscal impact. So if you accept the fact that staff didn't delay in any way, and we brought it to you as soon as we could get it in shape to bring it to you, that's what we did. If you want to make sure that the staff doesn't do something to delay it, and you feel it's necessary, add a sentence that says, and the city staff won't cause any delay to this project going forward.
I got
But
you.
it hasn't in the past.
I got you. And my comment was moving forward, Joe, not moving backwards. So I think your comment was kind of out of line because I wasn't going and regressing back to say it wasn't done. We'd already gone past that. So I'm saying in the event this resolution was moving forward, it does pass. I was asking for your advice on how we would hold staff accountable in a timely manner for the public to know that it's moving forward in a timely manner, because we just went through this verbiage with Councilman Mosby about reasonable and timely. So I'm just asking for your advice on what we would do in that case. What would be a better word? Reasonably, timely? We're just going to move forward? Do we ask for maybe quarterly updates, or what would you recommend?
In paragraph C, I would recommend either adding the word reasonably, so it'd be a reasonably timely manner, or delete the word timely and add in a reasonable manner.
Okay, I got you.
Okay. Councilmember Osborne.
First, I want to thank everyone who showed up with their concerns about what we should do as a community. Unfortunately, this property is not ours to have any prerogative over yet. It has not been annexed, so any of the things that we require of a planned community can't be applied yet until it's annexed. Once it's annexed, there are tons of things for them to go through regarding zoning, planning, building, and that will be a very long process in and of itself. And yes, I'm just as concerned as any of you about maintaining very low and low density housing, because we are at a loss for middle income housing and executive homes in our community. So that being said, if and when this is annexed, yes, we will make sure your concerns about traffic congestion, safety, parks, high versus low density are all addressed. That is completely on my mind. The fact that this is being paid for by the developer, the fact that the developer is aware of the history of LAFCO and is still willing to move this forward, this is just our responsibility. The only person who can make this application is the city, but it is the developer who has chosen to move this forward. So ultimately, this is actually LAFCO's decision once we say, yes, we'll make the application for you, and all of our costs are covered. So LAFCO is the decision maker once we agree to put it forward to them. And until that decision for annexation is made, we have no further comment on it. And I expect staff to do just what they have done, and that is protect our concerns as a community regarding that annexation. And so yes, I appreciate the fact that they took the time to require these additional documents as part of that initial procedure, given the developer has changed their mind and changed their plans, and we don't have a defined plan yet. So this was the best due diligence we could do with what was presented to us as a result of asking for that to move forward. That is my lengthy way of saying I would like to accept the addendum number 3. I would like to make a motion to accept the fiscal impact study and to adopt the resolution with the applicant's red lines and with staff's purple lines, shall we say, and our city attorney's suggestion to change the word timely to reasonable. That is my motion.
I second it.
Okay, discussion. So, Ms. Breeze, I have a question for you, if you'd come forward. I think everyone knows that we have several developments that are already approved for a number of homes that can be built. What number of homes are currently approved in the different developments that the developers have chosen not to build yet?
The total is approximately 800. We have 476 up at the Y. We have 308 out at River Terrace. We have 60 on Ocean Avenue. We have a number of projects that are approved. We just extended the Planning Commission and the council with working forward on the development agreements, have extended the map life on these projects. So those projects are ready for the applicants to come in with their plans, with their maps, and they can proceed immediately.
Okay, so 600, you say?
476 and 308 and 60, about 850 to 900.
Okay. So the reason I asked this question, thank you. Councilman Mose, did you have a question for Ms.?
I just was going to follow up on that.
Okay. Okay, good. So the reason I asked that question is it probably will come as no surprise to any of you that have been following this that I will be voting no on this motion. And it's not because I am anti-growth. As a matter of fact, it's just the opposite. I am pro-growth. The person from the Realtor's office that said that we need homes, we have very few homes, speakers have said that. I agree with you wholeheartedly. We have a very, very low inventory. What we need to figure out is why the developers are not building. We have 800 homes approved, but they're not building here. That is a question I'd like an answer to, why we're not building. Now we're going to add another development out there, possibly another development out there, with some more homes. I'm hoping if it is approved, I'm hoping that you build within our lifetime. But right now we have homes approved that are just not being built. I want to know why we're not. So honestly, I don't see the need to put additional approved homes on the market. So I'll be voting no, but I just want to explain why I'm voting no. It's not that I do not like the project. It's not that I do not like growth, just the opposite. The other reason, well, it doesn't matter what the other reason is, LAFCO. I really doubt if LAFCO is going to approve it anyway, but that's out of our control. All we have, as Councilman Osborne indicated, all we can do is move it forward, and it's up to them then. So that's my comment. Councilman Mosby.
Yeah, Ms. Breeze, if just a follow-up on, those projects are pretty old, are they not? How long have they been on the books?
Oh, they've been on the books for some since 2005, 2008, but we have, the developers have
10-ish
come
years or so,
forward
10, 12 years.
requesting
So obviously there's
maps.
Yeah, so obviously, yeah, we have updated them, right? So, but there's obviously some issues going on, and it would be nice for them to move forward with, but I think to count on those being developed tomorrow or anytime in the near future, we hope they do, but
We do.
they're not happening. So I think it's important that we look forward to a project that I know somebody's been working on for quite a few years, but is hungry to move forward with us. So I just want to say, yes, I hope the other guys hear this, and hopefully these guys can start breaking ground and set a trend for this town, and those vacant infill areas can get filled up. So, so I'll be in support for this.
Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's vote. And that passes 4-1. Congratulations. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back. 2021 budget. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 9, which is our continued discussion of a possible approval of a 2017-19 biannual budget. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. When we last met, you had asked that we bring back the jobs that were listed as being approved additional, that we are requesting additional positions, and you asked that we price them out, and that we've done that. And we provided you sheets in your inbox, but also showing the same information up here. As you can see, as we discussed before, converting the position title change from administrative analyst to deputy city manager has no change in salary range or cost. The police office staff assistant, the police safety administrative aide is a change of, my eyes are getting much worse, $10,746 annually at the top steps. In each of these cases, we looked at the top end of the scale and compared it to the top end of the other scale. The individual may not be there at the top step yet at the time, but we reported that way because that's the maximum cost or exposure, if you will. The next four, were all new positions, and so those costings you can see there for fleet maintenance technician, top end $67,510. For a compliance manager for the electrical division, $100,700. For solid waste program analyst, $67,866. For heavy equipment operator 2, $61,748. We've also are showing which fund types those come out of that are listed in the second column there. Down in the community development, you can see taking the senior code enforcement officer and upgrading that to a lead code enforcement officer has a $7,045 a year impact. And out of CDBG funds, the deputy director position increases as much as $20,331 on the top ends. Councilmember Vega, you had asked me last week which of these I considered most critical. I did explain we had some 80 positions to consider, and I felt these were those that made my cut. I'd say if I were going to pick out the three that I think are most critical, that would probably be, well, to me, the administrative analyst, because it's no cost, kind of a no-brainer for me. The other ones I think are most critical are the police safety administrative aide. I think that's an equity issue there. From what I'm told, the need for the compliance manager and the expanding role as the electric division faces that seems pretty critical. And probably the code enforcement officer for equity issues. That would be my personal feel. In all cases, the department heads have made these recommendations and would probably appreciate the opportunity to make the case on each one if you care to have them do that. And in addition, so this is what you asked us to do. I also wanted to bring some additional information because this, oh yeah, so go ahead.
If I might ask a question, you had on page Roman numeral XXVII, you had a Ad Development Program Specialist 1-2.
Is that what's on the other?
It's under water, it says here? Public Utilities Water.
Yeah, that's the one that the Utilities Director advised me they'd rather have the compliance manager for electric.
Okay, but then you had a Add Utility, you had 5 of them new here, and you only have 4 identified up there? But there were 5 new ones? You had a Utility Conservation Rep, and then you had the Development Program Specialist.
Okay, sorry about that. The Ad Utility Conservation Representative, that's going to be replaced with the Compliance Manager.
Okay, so then down right below that, you had Add Development Program Specialist 1-2?
That one's been taken out by the Larry Bean.
Okay, so that one's gone then?
Yeah.
Because that was going to be the stormwater person.
Right, and he said he didn't want to.
Okay, all right, so I didn't, thank you.
Right. So we're down to these 4 additional positions, and then you can see the upgrades of positions. Now, those are from the listing that appeared there. Out of full disclosure, I want to let you know about other positions that would have been found elsewhere. These are not new positions, but they are where we've looked at a position. We're keeping the position the same, but we're recommending a change in the salary range because of, again, what we believe are equity adjustments. And I wanted to bring those to your attention because this is a matter of full disclosure. There we go. Thanks. I needed every inch I could get on the size of that. And in this case, we've got 4 other positions to talk about. One of them in economic development, and it was an upgrade. It's to flex the position from being a 2 to a 2-3, I believe. And that involves a top end of as much as $8,154 a year. The recreation manager, we've actually gone from 2 recreation managers down to 1. And because of that and the conversion of the other recreation manager to a supervisor position, in this case, with all of those changes, even though this would be a slightly more than $10,000 a year increase to the recreation manager, with the other changes we did in position, there's actually a net savings. There's a savings of $15,000 that offsets the 10. In utility billing, the utility billing supervisor recommend an increase of 5% in their range, and the top end there would pay $2,000 more a year. And with the solid waste superintendent, bringing them at parity with the water superintendent, wastewater superintendent, it's similar in now the level of regulatory compliance and the like that goes on, as well as the operational issues. And so we were recommending a 10% increase in that range, and that would bring the top end up another $11,604. All of those were already costed into the draft budget, but want to make you aware of those positions.
Mr. Weimiller, do any of these position changes, we always like to keep a cushion between levels. So do any of these positions cause a need to raise now their supervisor, their manager?
No, there's no other compaction issues above them that they would drive, no.
Okay. Questions on these? Oh, well, you mentioned if we wanted to get some extra justification. So I know there's at least one of these positions. It's a new position that was actually hiring the person was going to save the city some money. Is that correct?
That's what we were talking about, the fleet. You're talking about the position at the landfill?
I believe it was, yes. So we were contracting out with that for that
right
now?
Yeah, with the fleet position that was the fleet maintenance technician. It's a matter of bringing some costs in-house that were being done outsourced that we believe we can do cheaper, yes.
And that was fully loaded, costs.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions on these positions for Mr. Weimiller?
Yes, I have a couple of positions.
Sure, go ahead.
Questions here. As far as the code enforcement, Mr. Weimiller, thank you very much for the information. Also, it's from senior to a lead. There's no current changes in personnel in that department. Is this just to compensate them for work?
Right, it's to better reflect the type of work they're doing and competitive to other agencies. It also puts them into the position, a little more of a lead position, so that if we ever were to expand, if you were to approve additional code enforcement officers, we would have a person in a lead position able to handle some of the supervision duties.
Also, on the other one, on the community development area, the deputy director, economic and community development, it comes to my attention that the CDBG is going to be funding that, which currently they fund it now. Is that correct? They fund that position now, and that person would be moved over?
I'm going to have Assistant City Manager Gallivan, who's also the director over this department, speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. So the CDBG does currently fund a position, the deputy director. We can go ahead and have that continued. There's an added capacity to that, but it would not hit the general fund as proposed. And as Mr. Weimiller pointed out, what is shown there is at the top step, the proposed in this next budget cycle is a 5%. So in the next budget cycle, we're not looking at the highest end by any means. That's the very first step.
Is there a different job description for this position?
Yes,
Is
yes.
that what's going on, or are they going to be doing the same job?
No, it is a new position, deputy director for the department. It would have added capacity, working between economic development, recreation, housing, collaborative projects, working with other divisions and departments, and increased capital development projects right now, as well as there's a return on investment with this position in that we are looking for more grant funding opportunities, such as the HRPP grant and other grants that we've been successful in getting that allow us to do improvements in our parks and our housing programs and the like. And also the incentive program that Council has asked for on the infill housing incentive is another area that is part of the expanded scope.
Thank you very much. Okay, I appreciate that. I have one more question. On Public Works, the fleet maintenance technician that we're adding, since we have Caterpillar or whoever it is that we have, these specialists that work on our heavy equipment, is this going to be an individual that's trained to actually, I'm sure they have special training to actually compensate for the fact that Caterpillar is the maintenance, they are the specialist. If I'm saying it wrong, whatever they're called, you know, and how do we ensure that actually we're going to be saving money because they specialize and probably can guarantee their work, and they probably have ready access to parts, I guess is one of my questions. I believe that probably what we're paying Caterpillar includes probably parts and labor, and it seems like a savings on the back end, but in reality, what's the training program behind this that actually is going to add life to our heavy equipment, you know, to our insurance policy, so to speak?
Sure. The position savings were analyzed for the full cost. We were pulling out what were parts costs and the like to be able to compare labor to labor. So we did do that part. On the training, maybe I can ask Mr. Ishiwata to come up and speak. He knows a little more succinctly about how we go about when we're recruiting, interviewing and hiring, how we establish the expertise of the individuals in particular functions.
Mr. Weimiller, I don't mean to, dig too deep into the job description, but I'm just wondering what the city's release of liability is going to be. You know, should added life seems like it would also be an expense, okay, because of the cost of the equipment, you know, so.
Good evening. So, Mayor, council citizens. So what specific question?
Dirk, you know, it's kind of like this training program. Do you have someone already on staff that's already trained for this heavy equipment, that's already been certified and actually is ready to go on this? Or is this someone you're going to be looking for within the ranks out there, I guess? Since it's a position that says there's savings, I guess I'm questioning whether the savings is real or because of the expertise it takes for this to be a heavy duty mechanic.
Correct. It would be a specialized position, as you said, a heavy-duty mechanic. Currently, we have one heavy mechanic on staff that could work on the Caterpillar equipment at the landfill. That's my lead. However, if you look at the amount of time that we devote to Gibbs to do the actual repairs, they're there, randomly throughout the month for short periods of time. So our return on investment is actually kind of smaller than if we were to have someone in-house, so we could use in multiple layers. We could have them assist with the sanitation, we can have them assist with transit and other fleet options as well for the same cost that we're paying for Gibbs right now.
Gotcha. That's my question. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Other questions? Oh, Councilman Mosby.
Hey, if I can, this has something to do with solid waste, and it was an item I was discussing with Mr. Wilkie, maybe, because we're looking at, just on this one page here, we're looking at about $330,000 worth of new expenditures, just on this page. So getting back, and we talked about this earlier about solid waste numbers, primarily I'm looking at page 160 in the budget book, because we got a guy in solid waste we're going to try to pay for, but we see down here it says the revenues over and under expenses by division, and if you could clarify this number that shows a negative $739,000 is what solid waste would be working in, and if you can tell me how we can.
Based on the inquiry you made, Councilmember Mosby, we in Finance took a look at the BBR that is the underlying data that's supporting the budget book and identified a couple of mispostings to the fleet costs that are allocated to solid waste through both the landfill and through the collections area. So what I gave you, the first sheet is a summary of that page 160, which shows the financial sources and the financial uses and that $739,000 negative net income for the year. The second page is showing what the adjustments would be to correct for that error that was found based on your inquiry. And it's a fairly large amount. The amount that we originally had for fleet was based on the original preliminary proposal from fleet. That was subsequently revised, but when we did the revision to the proposed budget, we just put the wrong number in the wrong place. So that change is a positive impact to the solid waste budget of about $101.1 million. So it goes from a negative 730 to a positive 300. And if you take into account the interest on the part that we looked at for the general fund when we were talking about reducing fuel costs to what was actually observed in the 15-17 cycle, the benefit crosses the whole entire city, not just the general fund. So the benefit to the solid waste fund is approximately $100,000, $108,000. And then if the decision is made to keep or leave the fleet maintenance technician out of the budget, that component related to fleet for solid waste is about $187,000. I'm not saying that that's our recommendation. I'm just saying that if those two things were added to that incorrect correction, then the revised net revenues for the solid waste fund would not be a negative 739, but a positive 645,000. So keep in mind that one of the goals of the solid waste fund's rate increases was to establish a 25% reserve ratio like we have with two of the other utilities, and we're still getting to that point. So this is still going to bring us closer to that goal. So,
No, it just makes me feel a lot better that that negative went to a positive.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure how we were going
and
to,
appreciate that.
how Larry
that
was going to
call
keep
out.
operating over there.
Okay, so.
That's
Well-
good.
Well, that is one reason why there are reserves, to help offset ups and downs that occur from normal ups and downs in the economy. We are going to have another recession, and at that point in time, the city's budgets will be affected, and having reserves in the utilities will help weather those storms. So, thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Councilman Starbuck.
Yeah, Mr. Wilkie, real quick, did this, just for my own knowledge, did this include the gas collection system in this under the solid waste utility uses?
Actually, in the 15-17 budget cycle is when it was budgeted, and I believe it was mentioned that a big milestone for that gas collection occurred last week. So a majority of it's already been installed. We haven't paid for all of it yet, but the payment for it will be coming from the 15-17 budget that we will carry over based on that particular project. So,
thank you.
So, to be short, there's nothing in the 17-19 budget related to that project.
Okay, so, Councilor Mosby, did you have something?
Yeah, if I could have just one other clarification on the, we discussed about parks, and it seemed like there was a significant increase in the parks. Oh, these pages. The parks expenditure, or, yeah, it was, we had discussed. Let's see, where do we have it? And it made it look like the park revenues were going up significantly. That's page 135. It made it look like we were spending an increase from 2.594 in 15-17 adopted to 3.242 million in 17-19.
And again, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Looking back at the 13-15 and 15-17 budgets, 13-15 was the tail end of when we were still counting budgeted vacancies to help balance the budget. So in the Parks Department, the budget for 13-15 included about $175,000 in credits that were attributable to those vacancies, which reduced that year's budget compared to the 15-17 budget, was where those positions were not only unfrozen, but they were filled with positions. The difference between the 15-17 budget and the 17-19 budget is primarily one item: the proposed demolition of the pool, the old municipal pool, funded with debt proceeds, is a capital item. It's in the capital program under engineering, but it's in a park. So we're in a former park, so that was put into a park line item as a capital item, which is one of the, not the only one, but primarily the only major capital item that's been proposed for the 17-19 budget in the general fund. And if you take that out, then the 17-19 and the 15-17 are fairly comparable, except for some salary increases due to MOUs and things like that. So, and the unfunded liability that is being imposed by CalPERS.
So my question in here, and thanks for bringing that forward, because I was sitting there scratching my head going, what are we doing? Because in reading in the descriptions and stuff, I was wondering, Dirk, what's going on in parks? How did you get an extra $700,000? But as it turns out, I appreciate that, because it wasn't really described out anywhere. But my question with if the book was approved, are we approving this expense of that $750,000?
Yes and no. You're approving the concept of spending that 750, but since it's a capital project and it's a public works project, it would still need to come back to council as its own project to be approved, we're assuming that it's going to be done by a contractor, and that contract would be over the limit requiring a full RFP process, and that RFP process would have to come back to council for approval. So anywhere in that process, you could say no. So.
Okay, and I noticed that the revenue portion was in on another page. That you had it brought in, but even though the money came in, I believe it was May.
Yeah, we've received the proceeds, but as I mentioned to you earlier today, there's a concept of matching in governmental general accounting standards where if you're spending $750,000 on something and you have to show the revenue in that same period, so you don't have untied together projects. So even though the revenue is in the general fund as uncategorized revenue, we still have to make sure that the revenue is recognized at the same time with expenses. So for the time being, that money will stay in our general fund as deferred revenues until we expend the funds on that project.
And that's on page 129 for anybody looking at it, because it's identified as proceeds from lease purchases.
Yep.
So it was, kind of figured that's kind of what the ballpark was, but being able to identify and put my finger on it, so I appreciate you putting those numbers together. It actually looks like park expenses are looking at going down a little bit, and that's the park number, that's including all of it, so
yeah.
Thank you.
And one of the things you had asked for was how is parks comparing budget to actual? So Dean was able to, after we talked, to get a very, very, very preliminary 16-17 number. So what we show is in 13-15, there's a positive variance in the budget of about $130,000. The projection, still very, very preliminary, is that it's going to be reduced to about $30,000 in the 15-17 cycle. So it's pretty narrow considering the extent of what that budget entails.
Yeah, it's pretty tight. I appreciate those actual numbers. That it makes it a lot easier. I know you had to scratch your head a bit on those to find them, but I appreciate that. So I was looking, trying to go through all this book and try to find numbers. Thank you.
And if that concludes the clarifications portion of our presentation, then we're back to the general discussion of the budget. I think we've presented to you 4 different possible versions, and we're open to receive whatever other.
I think it might be appropriate if we put up the last.
Sure thing.
Can I ask one more?
Sure.
One more question? This was referred to the capital outlays and improvements, in the pages that are on the city website. And we have, they were passed out to us. And I think it's important. I just wanted to ask the question because that's where, like you said, the only capital project is identified, and it starts at page 196. If I can, the question that I have is, some of these projects are recognized as proposed 2017-19. And then I've got, actually made copies. This is, you go on the city website, they're there, and we've had, I didn't think I have 18, but. It's, these are all part of the book, and the reason why I'm asking is, this is where I see the demolition of the old pool at the $750,000, and it says proposed on page 196. And then the other capital projects listed on page 197 aren't listed as proposed. And again, the same thing on page 198. But then when I go to 199, we have projects that are listed here as proposed under the 17-19 numbers. And granted, those are streets and such. But then we go to the next page, and we have proposed capital outlays and improvements for 2017 and 19, are those items in this budget book? Or are those, because according to this, they're still proposed for 17, 19?
As are in the budget document itself, the proposed budget is that proposed budget. So for the water distribution mains replacements, the $4,240,000 is also in the capital of the water division.
So all these other capital projects are also in this budget book?
Yeah. The only ones that were deferred or delayed, and the majority of that was for the general fund, because it just doesn't have the resources available to do the things that were requested by the departments. To the extent that some of the capital items for water, such as the new well 10, that will probably be taken out because the rates that were proposed to cover this were not approved as part of the 17-18 year. So to do that, we'll have to reduce and revise some of the capital items that will be brought back as part of the revised budget.
So again, if we approve the budget book, we're approving this list of capital projects, but are we approving?
Unless you have approve it based on, unless you approve it with exceptions, which would, one of those exceptions would be if you decide not to do the pool, the exception would be to adopt the budget less that the demolition of the pool.
Right, so I just think it's important we understand that when we're approving the budget, we're also approving these numbers here.
Correct.
Now, are we approving the projects, or each one of these projects going to have to come back to us?
Any project, because of its size, that would normally require, city council approval will come back to you as individual projects for approval.
Okay,
and to follow up on that, for instance, the water mains, that will probably be coming back to you in multiple projects because they're preparing a design for about 11 miles of projects, which may come back to you over a number of years in workable segments. And all of them will come back to you because all of them will be above the $125,000 limit to make it affordable and economic to do.
And we're looking at $19,778,000?
Okay.
Mr. Wilkie, $19,778,000?
You're talking about for this?
It's proposed 17-19.
No, that's what we built when we built our capital budget, what was identified as the needs. However, by the time we presented the draft budget,
Yeah, he's talking about that number.
we had taken everything out but for, everything out of the general fund, but for the pool. So are you talking about the balance of all other funds?
What I'm talking about is the documents that I printed off the city's website that says, that I'm assuming we're still operating under, that says proposed for 2017-19. A number of the items have been reviewed. You know, elevator upgrade, police department and such. Those are not proposed, but there are still papers that are showing that we're proposing these other projects. Are we no longer proposing any of those?
They are all in the budget. The title of that $19,778,000 is Total Enterprise Fund Proposed Capital Improvements. So, for instance, the transit system has a $4.1 million proposed expenditures for the Transit Maintenance Center. The stormwater, solid waste fund has proposed $2.1 million for required stormwater improvements at the landfill. The aforementioned $4.2 million for the water distribution mains. Those are all in each individual utility, but for all the utilities, they add up to the $19.77 million.
So what is the funding mechanism for that? That's
those
this
individual
budget?
utilities.
In this budget?
Yes.
Okay, so because those are capital projects.
Yes.
Okay, because as we talked earlier today, you told me the only capital projects we were doing were those on page 196.
And I said general fund.
General fund.
The only general fund project we're doing is the pool.
Okay.
I was clear. If I wasn't clear, that was just a general fund.
And that's all I'm
apologize.
asking. I'm asking the question to clarify because I really haven't focused on the pages that didn't come directly in the budget book.
Well, we've gone through 4 years of rate increases for water and wastewater precisely to be able to have funding to do work on main replacements, and that's what's being proposed.
Okay, then this takes me again to page 203 then. And in page 203, we have under fleet, comprehensive vehicle replacement plan, $5 million. So we're looking at buying $5 million worth of vehicles in this budget cycle?
No, that number needs to be revised based on what was included in the fleet's budget, and the total amount for that is...
And are any of those vehicles general fund vehicles?
Let's answer one question at a time if we can.
Well, the answer to that one is yes, because there's almost always an ongoing replacement of vehicles for the police department, for squad vehicles. So.
But you're still going to answer the original question, right?
I'm looking for it.
Thank you.
So there is general fund in there, then I guess.
Well, it's paid for the general fund, for every fund, those are paid through the fleet replacement payments from each utility, which is not considered a capital item in those funding sources. It's considered capital out of the fleet fund. So, and the vehicles are all owned by the fleet fund. So the vehicle asset stays in the fleet fund until they're replaced again. And I think I might have to confer with Dean about what's the total amount that's in capital for fleet, because I don't think it's identified individually in the budget book.
I just, and again, I criticize myself for not going on the city website and identifying these and pulling these off, but I would ask these questions a little earlier, but.
What I can say is that the $5 million that's proposed in the capital improvement report is to get the whole entire fleet back to a replacement cycle that isn't out into the 2045 period.
No, I agree. I'm not denying that we don't need to do this.
I'm just saying that's why the $5 million is there. What we did do, we did reduce that to what is actually critically required to be replaced in the current year, and it's not nearly that $5 million. And we have identified those vehicles that need to be replaced in the period.
And I think I had this discussion, I think, a while back with you when I was reviewing Santa Maria's budget book, and they actually put the fleet in there so you can see when you're doing your fleet replacement. It identifies the whole fleet in several pages, and you can see the identification in there so you can see when they need to be replaced and what you're doing. And I guess that's what I hear what you're saying. These are things we have to fix, but I know, we've been talking about pivotal moments, and the B word was used and such in here. And I'm just, when I see everything else that's in here, and we haven't really focused much on the enterprises because the enterprises have a good solid funding mechanism, but I'm just curious, if we're in this position, are these expenses that we have to have?
So
Say.
the amount that's actually proposed to be purchased during the 2-year cycle is $2.274 million. That includes 3 vehicles of the solid waste landfill. Collection vehicles, as you know, are critically needed.
That was 2.37 million, you said, for?
2.27. So half of what's in the budget, or less than half that's in the budget.
Okay, so it's half of what we see of 5 million, so it's not.
It's 2.274. So 4 collection vehicles and 3 landfill vehicles appears to be. Actually, that's just the amount that's in solid waste, now that I'm talking. So that's the solid waste vehicles that are critically needed to be replaced.
2.274 million? And that's already budgeted in this book? That's already in the expenses?
Yep.
Okay, and do we still have a positive at the end? Okay.
Yes.
But do we don't know the general fund costs in there then?
I know there's at least 3 or 4 squad cars in there. Other than that, I don't think there's very much of anything.
Well, it'd be nice to have that number come out so we can see. Again, when we're discussing this, you know, we're looking in these numbers, what is the total here? 25 million bucks, roughly, plus or minus a little bit of money that we're in the so, you know, that's maybe you guys can get back to us more on what the general fund costs are in there. And I'm not saying somebody's getting a brand new Cadillac or something like that, but in this pivotal moment of time, we want to make sure that we're seeing everything on the table and getting all the pages collected.
So to make sure it's whatever's included in our general fleet fund, that is general fund, you'd like that pulled out, what's being imputed into that whole fleet number.
Well, I think it would be good for us to know. I mean, it would be good for you to be able to see as well what we.
No, I agree. I want to make sure that's.
Yeah, good breakdown in there so we know what we're getting. So.
Okay, I just want to make sure we had it right.
And I mean, I know some cash registers are being purchased. You know, that's identified out relatively simply, but. And I don't know if any other council members had time to review these as well. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so.
I wasn't sure what you were asking for. Was it the 4% exercise or was it?
Yeah, well, I think that's the most recent budget adjustment that you've given to us. Is that correct?
I made some adjustments after going through the 4% exercise, and I made my recommendation what I would do if it were my call. I don't have a vote, but.
I think that's where we were last time.
Okay.
We're looking at.
Well, let me recap real quickly what I presented the last time then. We went back and we said, well, our original draft budget shortfall without the ballot measures in it was $1,363,000. And you had also since asked to restore the funding for these outside agencies. So adding all that together, that's where we came to saying that to balance the budget this year and not rely on any ballot measure, we need to do $1,866,045 of cuts out of that draft budget. So, what I was also showing then was that where we would get those cuts. So, let me go back. So that's basically the 4% here, but without fire here down at the bottom, those bottom two numbers. So stepping through that, it was eliminate city-supported privately run events. There were some objections to that when we discussed it. Eliminate the crossing guard grant program. Some citizens expressed a concern. Just wanted to say, I believe the crossing guard should be there as well. It's just that I believe that's the school district's responsibility and not the city's. At least that's how it's been in any school district I've been a part of. We would defer the demolition of the swimming pool building till sometime whenever that's more affordable. I talked about City Hall closure and voluntary furloughs, a reduced fuel budget, temporary cancellation of commissions, and not all commissions, just, we kept in place those that have action points. Some cuts that we had previously covered in an earlier iteration from economic and community development, a couple of adjustments here in the parks division, Talked about the North County Rape Crisis Center having voluntarily eliminated their administrative billing the portion of their invoice, and then some reductions in the library. And all of that together provided $2,850,000 in cuts, our target. That got us well below that target, but taking out the $9,979,000 and leaving fire rescue untouched gives us $1,870,000 in cuts, and that target that we had to balance the budget was $1,866,000. So we would have a balanced budget. And what I'd said was that moves Plan B into Plan A position, making it having a balanced budget that doesn't rely on on any ballot measure passing for this cycle. It restores outside funding to the agencies, enables fire rescue to remain fully operational, and it buys us time. I would still be recommending to you to allow the voters to decide whether or not they want to fund services via a tax measure in November 18 ballot. And we'd be able to buy us time to that point and help guide us of where we'd go from there. So.
And the tax measure you're talking about was just a single measure, a sales tax?
Yeah, at this point, based upon the feedback I've gotten and discomfort that was expressed with the utility users tax and the transient occupancy tax, then I had recommended, well, rather than do a 0.5% sales tax, if we did a 1% sales tax and did not do the other two, we'd have close to, not quite as much, but about the same tax revenue being generated. I would identify that for a very set period of time with a sunset 15 years to coincide with our payoff of the unfunded liability of the with CalPERS unfunded liability. But I would stress again, the purpose of the ballot measure is to keep services intact, because the unfunded liability needs to be paid whether or not we do a tax measure. So the tax measure that we would present would be to give voters the opportunity to decide on whether for this period of time they'd want to keep their services intact.
And that was the other direction you wanted from us, was whether the 15-year or the 30-year.
Right, and I recommend the 15-year, that it saves about the 15-year versus the 30-year saves about $29 million citywide, about $21 million savings to the general fund doing the 15-year.
Okay, Councilmember Mosby.
Yeah, in light of what transpired last meeting and when this came forward, I was a little astonished to see that, and I did make a comment to you that I felt that I hadn't been heard, and you made a comment that your direction comes from council as a whole, but I don't work for individual council members, and I don't work for the mayor. I work for the majority of the council. And so in light of that, it caught me off guard. So doing a simple transcription of what happened at the June 26th meeting. And at the June 26th meeting, I believe I had Councilmember Vega in support, and that's where I was at the 10,000-foot level and made a recommendation in 9 areas of looking in and investigating for cuts in different departments had gone up. And I had said that I feel everything I've said in the last several meetings wasn't even heard. So I do have a transcript, and I did make 18 copies to pass out. But not only that, I had Councilmember Starbuck in agreement. Councilmember Vega again was in agreement, and Councilwoman Osborne also made a statement. So I agree with Councilmember Mosby, has pointed out several areas where we could potentially trim or put a hold on hiring. Even the mayor at the end of the meeting made a comment to you, said, City Manager, from comments that have been made by Councilman Mosby and Councilwoman Osborne, do you need clarification on any of their direction? City Manager says, no, I appreciate it. I'd like to have the opportunity to return with a plan if it's the pleasure of the council as a whole or the council's majority to follow those, Mr. Mosby's and Ms. Osborne's recommendations. I don't think I need more clarification. I appreciate the 10,000-foot level, and I'm concerned more clarification might bring it down below the glide path. So I did spend the time, some assistance in getting them. They're not a certified transcript, but I have this to pass out so council can see, because I feel that I did offer an opportunity for a direction, looking at another avenue and another way to go. I did type it up instead of being more vocal. It's about the 9,800-foot mark. I didn't get down in the trenches, but I'd like to put this other opportunity forward. If anybody wants to see, I did make 18 copies of this one, as well as it's a little more refined there as well. But I think there are other areas that we can look at, and here's a 12-point. Sorry, Stacy, I had more documents. Made some copies for public as requested that we make 18 copies of anything. Was that 18 in addition to the council, or is, no? There's 12-point and then. But I feel there are other opportunities that we can investigate and look into, and maybe we can come up without the tax measures coming on that. And this is a form of tightening the belt. From what I gather right now, currently there are 32 vacant positions in the city right now. And I believe that we can work together in the city. Again, this is about protecting a PERS obligation. This is about moving forward in a strong fiscal manner. We have added a number of positions over the years, number of departments over the years. This is no recommendations to reduce in PD at all, of course. Chief? No, you guys are having difficult times, but this is something that I think that we need to investigate and look into and see. Again, I'm posing these as questions to identify and to look what we can do. If city staff, if a position is there that's one that's newer come in, we have positions opening up, we retrain, we bring in, we take care of our people. That's what we need to do. But I think in this time of crisis, we don't look at a lot of what we saw here were cuts to the public, reducing city hall time, reducing crossing guards. And if that is something the council wants to go, I don't think that's reducing crossing guards is something you do a month before school starts. And if you're going to do that, you're not going to, I believe we were grant funded with that years ago. And for some reason, we're not grant funded. But if that's something, either it's a CBDG issue or something else. But if we're not going to do it, we don't tell the people 30 days before school starts that that's an avenue that we're going to go. But I think this has an opportunity to come back with some numbers to make us solid. And these are numbers that could keep us solid for a good 10 years. And granted, still with the analysis using page 138 of the budget book, we still have 2% annual increase in personnel expenditures and 2.2% annual increase in supplies and such. So we could be within 2 to 4 years, we're back, in 2 years, we're back to where we are right now. So we can get through this. I believe there's another option. And I just wanted to put that out there for the council to take a look at. I don't know if you guys want me to read down the 12-point list or not. Maybe you guys have some things you want to add onto a list. But I believe that this was an option that on June 26th, when I gave an analysis of where the increases had happened in the last 4 to 6 years, and some of the departments have had some significant increases over the years. And I believe, with corporate mentality, numbers that go up, that's where you look first. And we've had a 40 to 60% increase in some of the departments. And what we're looking at is maybe some 5 to 10% decreases. So I don't think a reset of that is a travesty, and I think it's something we can work through and we can get through.
Councilmember Osborne.
First, Councilmember Mosby, I really appreciate you reviewing everything and coming up with new options. But first and foremost, shrinking the size of government is not a policy, it's a philosophy. So at that point, we disagree in philosophy. Secondly, government is not a business. The core principle of a business is to maximize the profit or the shareholder's value. The core tenet of government is to maximize services distributed to our community and our citizens. So I see this as a balance when we're being affected that unfortunately we all need to bear some of the weight. I go back to a page before all of the recent additions in the budget of new positions, and that would be Roman numeral page 26, and city total positions, and it's a graph that shows that in 2005-2007, we had 387 employees. The proposal in front of us is a total of 384 employees. So we haven't even returned to pre-recession numbers. We've had some ups and downs, but we really haven't overgrown. There's been position changes. There's been new individuals coming on board because of different work that needs to be done, and that will continue to happen, especially as we upgrade the computer system and our financials and how that work is done. Those individuals will either change to learning the new positions or they will transition out of doing the work and we have to hire somebody who's capable of doing it. So this is, an argument that could go down the path of discussing CPI that's been applied to contracts that we have no control over and how that has caused a growth to our expenses. It could go down to cost of living adjustments being applied to other contracts that we don't have control over that we have had to absorb. So again, I look at the last offering, the Plan B that moved to Plan A, as the best balance for everything. And yes, I'm sorry to give anybody notice a month before, but it is a school district. There are volunteers. I was in 5th, 6th grade. I was a crossing guard. There are ways to deal with this. It provided an opportunity for me to learn civic responsibility. So I would like to say that we have found a way forward that still gives the community an opportunity to do exactly what I recommended last time, which is put it to the direct vote of the people to vote on a tax measure. If they don't support it, that's telling us they don't want these services and we're gonna have to make even deeper cuts, at which point that will be positions. But right now, I don't think, again, solving the problem on the backs of positions that are vital to some of the projects we have going forward that will drive economic development, workforce development, and housing is a good idea. So I would prefer to make a motion to accept the last budget cut that got us to the 1.8, saved fire and rescue, with the amendment to provide a 1-year contract for the chamber, and it's not for lack of support with the chamber, but I want to see 108,000 of that go towards the privately run events, so they're not dropped in a year, and have that second year allotted to those events, and then close City Hall every Friday for a year. And let's see at the end of that year if we've had enough budget savings based on quarterly updates from staff that we might be able to return to Fridays, or we have additional funding that we could do a second-year contract with the chamber. I'm looking to move it along and not keep rehashing all of the minutia in this, because we're getting to the point where we're going to start losing quality employees because we keep talking about heads, and they're not going to wait to see who we decide. They're going to leave because there are other jobs available. And we're not the only community dealing with this. We're just the first community willing to deal with this. So personally, I'd like to make a motion to accept the last budget go-round presented to us with saving fire and giving the chamber a 1-year contract and giving $108K of that to city privately run events.
And I'll make a substitute motion that we put forward the document that I presented with the 12 items. And I'd be looking for a second on the substitute motion.
Okay, without a second, that fails.
I'll
Okay,
give you
we're
a
back.
second on that one.
Okay, so we have a second on, which one are you seconding?
On which motion, right? Because we've got two motions out there.
Okay, well,
The substitute motion would take precedence, so. The second
Okay,
would have been.
so are you giving a second to Councilmember Mosby's?
And this is for analysis to come back, to bring back to C if we have the ability to do this.
Or are you seconding Councilmember Osborne's
Yeah,
motion?
for Councilmember Mosby's, for just an analysis to see what the options are and what the numbers look like, right?
Yes. Yes,
That's a
that is
second
correct.
For Councilman Mosby's.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and the substitute motion will be voted on before the initial.
Can I just have clarification? So the motion by Councilmember Mosby is to direct staff to return back with an analysis at a future date of these 12 items that he just provided this evening, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Haddon, can I have you clear the voting buttons? My book laid on top of them. Thank you.
Okay, so protocol calls that a substitute motion will be voted on prior to the initial motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
There was no second to Councilman Osborne's motion, so that's not on the table at all. The only motion on the table is Councilman Mosby's because it received a second.
Okay, well, it may not make a difference, but I will second Councilmember Mosby's, or Councilmember Osborne's motion. However, still the substitute motion will be voted on first. Okay, so discussion on Councilmember Mosby's. Okay, so I'm assuming now, if, just for clarification, if we approve or we vote in favor of Councilmember Mosby's motion, Councilmember Osborne's motion, really it makes no difference because we're not going to be moving forward with her motion anyway.
I'm going to try to clear up the parliamentary part of this. We had a motion and there was no second. Then we had immediately another motion. That motion received a second. Now you have seconded the first motion. So actually the substitute motion is Councilman Osborne's. And the first vote would be whether or not to vote to allow that substitute motion to become the main motion. So the vote now is whether or not to make Councilwoman Osborne's motion the main motion.
Okay. So, okay, so that's what we will vote on now, whether Councilmember Osborne's motion is the substitute motion.
Will become the main motion, right?
No.
Whether Councilman Osborne's substitute motion will become the main motion.
The main motion?
And the main motion is Councilman Mosby's because it received a second before Councilman Osborne's received a second.
Excuse me, Mr. Attorney, was the call for the vote, though, prior to the second motion? The call for the vote on my substitute motion, I believe, was called for a vote prior to the second.
Actually, I never called for the vote.
So I'm going to repeat. I think the next thing that should happen is a vote should take place on whether or not Councilwoman Osborne's motion is to become the main motion.
The main motion being voted on first?
First, what's going to happen is you're going to decide whether or not you want to consider Councilman Osborne's motion.
Okay. Okay, so let's vote on that. I'll call for the vote. Any discussion on that?
Already have a second. You were the second.
What's that?
You were the second.
I was the second, yes. Okay, so any discussion on this? So the vote we're taking right now is to make Councilmember Osborne's motion the primary motion. Yes. Okay, so let's vote on that. Okay, and that fails. Okay, so now we will vote on Councilmember Mosby's motion, and that is to...
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I don't know if for the public record you want to read or at least summarize what that is. It's up to you as a body.
Well, he put out copies for the public. Councilmember Mosby, do you want to summarize it? I certainly don't want to.
Oh, well, I can rapidly. It's what it is. It's reviewing 12 areas of the budget book and primarily looking back and see if there's cost savings in going back to previous budgets and realigning some positions the way we had done it in the past, and like, you know, things that were brought in the last 2 budget cycles, whether we continue with them. But again, this is for, come back with analysis. This is an approval. This is approval for staff to come back with analysis and numbers in here. So it's still, this is just still analysis. This isn't making anything solid saying this is what we're going to do. This is just to continue on in a pivotal time to continue studying the budget book. In the nutshell.
Mr. Weimiller, did you have a comment, question?
Well, I'm just noticing, and I'm looking through the issues, and again, I'm feeling bad that Mr. Mosby felt he wasn't being heard. I said it before, I said it again. I listened to him, I listened carefully. I made notes. I can show the notes that show the 9 areas. My problem is some of this, I'm not sure I'm able to accomplish. Here's an example. Provide the cost savings from eliminating the new general fund positions in community development and city administration added in the 2015-27 budget. So maybe some clarification from Mr. Mosby. You're not talking about laying off those employees.
I'm asking the cost savings if we didn't bring them in. So it would be those positions being dissolved. Those were new positions that were added in the 15-7 page Roman numeral 27.
And what's your intent about and what to do with the people?
The intent right now is just to see the number. Just much like we saw the dollar number here.
It's to assume that through attrition, we assign them somewhere else.
If that was something that somebody, if that was approved as a cost-saving measure, most definitely. It would be an assignment, retraining, whatever it might be. But again, this is a homework assignment to see numbers. Much like we saw the number that when you put up here on this chart. So those numbers are on this chart.
Can I confer with the city attorney for a moment?
Yes.
Is that okay, Mayor?
Go ahead.
Thanks.
Can I take a couple-minute break? So we're going to take a 3-minute break. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'd like to make a generalized statement in response to the question before us and about the ability to analyze and report back. I think we're best if I suffice it with the response. I can do that. The very analysis and ultimate reporting back, whether verbally or in writing, I anticipate is going to have some impacts that are adverse to the desires of the city council and of the city in light of current labor negotiations that are underway. That having been said, we can proceed with that, but I just feel compelled to give that caution. As a matter of explanation, I certainly had not only written down the 9+ items and areas. At the end of the June 26th meeting, I was very clear to make sure we had a differentiation exactly what council's direction was. And it looks like the transcription drops off before it gets to the area where I do that with council. So I just want to be clear on that as well. So if we can we step through these areas just to make sure I understand them and that I bring back the analysis that you want to see. So number 1, provide the savings if the fire marshal was moved back as one of the 3 battalion chiefs in the 2013-15 budget. So we have 3 current fire battalion chiefs, and we have a fire marshal. We have those 4 positions filled. So your question is, if we move the fire marshal into a battalion chief position, will there be a saving into one of the 3, which, so I don't want to make this more difficult than it needs to be. Really what you're asking there is, what's the cost of the fire marshal position and eliminating a fire marshal position, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And
as it is designed now, in the past, the fire marshal position did align primarily under the fire department, but yes.
Okay. And you wanted that based on current rates, even though it says in the 13-15 budget. You mean structurally how it appeared there, but what the current
Yes,
cost
on
would
page
be.
185 of that book. That's why I put the page numbers there, but yes.
Mr. Mosby, if I may, just to be clear, the fire marshal still is under the fire department. You just made a comment saying it's not
Out of the building department, as in the general fund book when we had 3 and not 4. And that was a position that came in the last budget book, although it's not identified on the new personnel section on the additions. It's identified in the back, and I don't know if that was something because we brought it in later, but it wasn't in the personnel section in the Roman numeral pages.
And this part is key before I move on to number 2. And that is council's desire to have that analysis done.
It is not the entire council's desire, it is...
We need to poll each one so that we have legal clarity on
we need a consensus of at least 3.
Yeah.
So just so the staff is clear, so that we don't make the mistake of not responding to the council majority.
Should we vote and pass this first, and then you get clarification, or what do you want to do?
I can move on to number 2 if I know at least.
Well, maybe,
if I know at least
to,
3 of you support.
Maybe we need to call for the vote. And
if I know at least 3 of you support that item, I can do it. If not, we are in a different situation altogether.
Okay, so,
I'd like to ask a question before we vote of our legal counsel.
Sure.
So I quickly read through this during our 3-minute break. There is a lot here that is not necessarily directing policy. It's directing actually discussion of actual positions and the elimination of them. I feel like we're legally overstepping our ability to discuss that because these are very specific positions, not policy directions on numerous of these items. So I'm a little nervous having the direction be eliminate position as part of the discussion when it's not policy driven. It's talking just blatant numbers, and I don't feel that's policy. So can we get some direction on the wording that this is?
Yeah, I'm not hearing what's being suggested as take an action to eliminate a position. I'm hearing take an action, give us information about if something gets eliminated. And then the city council certainly has the authority to pass a budget that doesn't include any of the listed positions in the budget.
Thank you.
okay, so I guess we need to know if there's 3 people that want to proceed with that item. I guess you need to indicate by saying aye.
Can we go to approve all 12 and then he can clarify as written? You don't want to do 12 votes, do you?
I think he needs to know on each individual one. Is that what you want to know, Mr. Wyman?
Well, I posed,
I
my
may
motion
not
was
have-
all 12, so.
I may not have questions on all 12, but certainly on this issue, there's a fine line where I need to know whether it's 3 or more of you support that analysis, and I can go forward.
So if I may, again, parliamentary-wise, so what's before the council is whether or not to pass a motion that directs staff to do what this piece of paper says in terms of these 12 items. If none of the council have any question on what these mean, then you can have your vote. And then the city manager can ask for clarification, so he is sure he understands what it means, so that when he brings back to you, he brings back to you what you want.
Well, I believe we did vote on that, and there was a pass 3-2.
Then he's asking for clarification.
Okay.
Stacy, did they vote on these 12 items? They haven't. You have not voted. You have a motion, but you haven't voted yet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So did the council have questions that they need to get answers to before they can make a motion, vote on whether or not to approve these 12 items?
Okay, so, I just heard a comment out there. We didn't have public comment on this. So I'm going to, Mr. Wymiller, if you wouldn't mind if I could have you step down. I'd like to open this up to public comment, and then we'll come back to the council. Public comment on this.
Deb Andrews, Mission Hills off Rucker Road. I applaud the mayor and city council, the people's representatives' attention to the details, of which this is very important, and requesting clarification for items included and excluded. I applaud the dedicated Lompoc public servants. Full disclosure, I was a public servant for 11 years. Last meeting, I was glad to learn that you have zero-based budgeting for the city, but it seems that it's been turned on its head. Rather than public services be the line items that must be supported by additional things, it's positions and pensions. It should be public services that are the most important thing in zero-based budgeting, and then things are added that support those public services. Public services are the order of the day. Every other line item only exists to support those public services. As such, jobs and pensions are vital to deliver public services, but they are not the end goal. Public services are the end goal. Knowledgeable people invest funds for pensions, but it is a gamble. In the Wall Street Journal yesterday, EnerVest, a $2 billion private equity fund, is now worth nothing. The Orange County Employees Retirement System has marked its investment in that company down to zero. We don't know what the future holds. It's important for retirees as well as citizens to have a better plan than we have now. I urge the council to consider changes for new hires to better protect retirees and citizens. In the Santa Barbara News Press, there was an article, the report by a National Association of State Budget Officers. The increasing frequency of mid-year budget cuts and lagging tax revenues have been a theme for many states. Both indicators are now at levels not seen since the Great Recession. Illinois is an example. They have just passed a 32% increase in the personal income tax rate and a 33% increase in the corporate tax rate. Both those initiatives do nothing to address their pension liabilities. This is very big. Every line item, everything we do is so important because we have big costs coming up. Services to the public are the order of the day in the city budget, funded by citizens and those public services delivered at the lowest cost possible. I think these questions that Councilman Mosby wants clarified are very important and a part of this analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jack Roden, hi, resident of Lompoc. City of Lompoc was incorporated almost 130 years ago to serve the needs of the people of Lompoc. To this day, that remains the only legitimate reason for its existence. The people of Lompoc let their needs be known by their election of its members of the City Council. The City Council oversees the collection and expenditures of a great deal of money. It would be irresponsible of the City Council to ignore its responsibility to see that this money is prudently used. To this end, the council is responsible for establishing a biennial budget. It is the council's responsibility to see that the budget is balanced and serves the needs of the public. It needs to clearly set priorities and set policies, and the city manager needs to see that those priorities are implemented with the resources available. No part of the operation of the city that involves the expenditure of public funds should be beyond the reach of the budget considerations. When the budget is complete, it is the council's budget. If the city council sees that public service functions are more important to the public than internal service functions, then that policy should be implemented. When appropriate, the city council must consider the modification or termination of any position in the city that does not contribute to the overall mission. If the council sees that a cop or a crossing guard or the museum is more important than a new engineer, then the council's responsibility is clear. The budget is the responsibility of the city council. The city council needs to take control of the process.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, close public comment. Bring it back. Mr. Weimiller, I think it's probably best if we do get clarification, yes, come on up, on each of these points before we vote. And so there's been a motion and a second, and now we're in discussion. And I think the discussion we have is clarification on these points so we know what we're voting on. So the first point was?
The first point on number 1 says, provide the savings if the fire marshal was moved back as one of the 3 battalion chiefs, as in the 2013-15 budget, page 185. So I asked for clarification. Does that mean elimination of the fire marshal position? And Mr. Mosby affirmed that it is.
If I may, just to be clear, the the city needs a fire marshal. So it's not eliminating the fire marshal position, meaning you won't have a fire marshal, you need a fire marshal. So I'm guessing what that means is eliminate one of the 4 battalion chiefs, because the fire marshal is a battalion chief, and have only 3 battalion chiefs, and have one of those 3 act as the fire marshal. Is that what the request is?
As we've done before, that's correct.
So you want me to step through all of these before, or you're taking them one at a time?
I guess we need to make sure that the council is clear on these.
To do that, you'll need to have a substitute motion, because you have a motion on the floor to approve all 12.
Okay.
If you want to do them one by one, every time one comes up, you'll have to seek a substitute motion to do.
So do we want to go ahead and vote on 12, and then I can get my clarification, because I do need some clarification.
I think it's okay, for me, it's okay. I know if I hear all 12 clarification, then I can vote on the 12
Okay.
in general. So, Councilmember Osborne.
So I don't agree on all 12, and I'll take the opportunity with each discussion to point out where I disagree. I guess that's the best way to move forward on this, because, again, rather than giving direction, I'd much rather consider all of these, much like we were, rather than sending staff down a path of working again on a completely new budget. So I'll go with discussion.
Okay. So for the second item, provide the cost savings from eliminating the new general fund positions in community development and city administration added. So if I'm understanding that's right, all that position or those positions that are on page XXXII of the 15-17 budget related to community development and administration, we eliminate those positions.
Again, if I may, this is analysis, this is not elimination, this is to see the numbers. So I don't have it written, eliminating positions in here.
Okay, well.
I don't have that written here.
A reduction in the workforce that matches.
This is an analysis of the numbers. It doesn't say eliminate positions. This is just putting the numbers out there.
It says cost savings, so I'm trying to establish where the cost savings comes from. Because I can answer off the top of my head, there's no cost savings unless there's elimination of positions. So that's why I'm asking, is it an elimination of positions?
Well,
I don't know what other, it's because it says cost saving. I think you've made my point. If I'm misunderstanding it, if it's not eliminating, but it says here that one is eliminating positions. Anything else going to go on there?
Councilmember Osborne?
So I'm in agreement with the city manager that it says, provide the cost savings from eliminating the new general fund positions in community development and city administration. So it is, while you're picking your words, at one point you're saying it's a cost saving, and at the same time, it's eliminating positions. So I get that you're trying to say it's just, as you'd like to say this time, an analysis, and we're doing our due diligence, but it's still discussing eliminating positions. So I get that it's an exercise, but let's be frank, you're requesting the cost savings of eliminating positions.
Number 3, provide the cost savings from eliminating the planning positions added in the 13-15 budget. Provide the actual income and expense for the planning department for fiscal years 14, 15, and 16. Okay.
I have a point to clarify on that. As a general fund division, there is no planning revenues. It goes into the pot of the general fund. So it would be very difficult to identify what that number is or what the proposed number is for the budget. There are revenue streams that are tied to planning, but it goes into the general fund. So I'd like to know what that means.
As you said, revenue streams coming into the planning department, and you have revenue streams as expenses in the planning department. So aligning those.
But they're separate. The general fund gets revenues, the general fund has expenses, It's not like it's a utility where those are in the same area.
You have money that's collected in the planning department, and you have money that's spent in the planning department.
But the money that's collected in there by and for planning purposes is a general fund, non-discrete,
You don't have a way of
Detailed.
tracking on your computer, is that what you're saying?
we don't track it by the department.
Okay, do you have a way of tracking the expenses?
We do. Yeah. I'm just trying to make the point that it's a general fund discretionary revenue. If we get money for a planning permit, we can use it for a police officer. And so there's no tie between the two. We don't show that we have a net revenue in planning from planning activities.
Okay, then you can't track planning expenses though, right?
Yeah, we can track both, but what I'm saying is that permit fees coming in are not
Sure.
necessarily tied to those activities.
Then I would ask you to do the best you can.
Okay.
Mr. Bean, you had something about number 4?
I have the page up right now, but you have it. On number 4, you list savings by eliminating the new positions in the 2015 budget. Are you referring to the ones in utilities? Look at that page.
Yes, and on the top of the header, I have, and items will provide the salary benefit and cost savings to the general fund and utilities, so I had it.
Correct. But on that page, there are numerous, by example, positions in electric. Those positions were done to keep our workforce. We are having an impossible time of hiring linemen.
Well, primarily I was looking
Linemen
at
are way
primarily
under-
when I was looking at it is general fund positions, so you could
Well, I want you to make your recommendation to eliminate utilities
Again, I'm looking
from
at
that
it-
number 4.
Okay,
Please.
Okay, put general fund position in there then.
Thank
if
you.
that would be okay.
Right, okay. Yeah, because there are 26 and a half full-time equivalent positions we're talking about there.
Well, they weren't necessarily new positions. They weren't new positions.
Okay.
Were those electricals considered new position, Mr. Bean? Or
Yeah,
just
yeah, 'cause I just added
or were they
the pluses.
reclassifications?
Well, they're new positions in the sense that we never had them before.
Weren't they
We
reclassified?
never had a troubleshooter. We eliminated 3 12 kV
And you
linemen and made them into troubleshooters.
Right,
So-
we reclassified them.
But this page that you listed, number 4, isn't clear on that. That's why I'm trying to get it cleared up. I don't want anyone in electric
Me
to
neither.
think we're taking away these.
Me neither. And I'm not trying to take
Can't do
anybody's
that.
away. It's
We
just,
can't even talk about analyzing it. They will
okay,
go.
there you go. General fund positions.
Thank you. Number 5, provide the cost savings of reducing library funding to the 15-17 budget level.
Mr. Mayor, could we go back to number 4, and maybe it's just me? Are there some positions on that page 37 that are both general fund and utility funded? And if they are, is that included in the general fund position you're talking about, or is it only positions that are 100% funded by the general fund?
Well, the ones that are general fund and utility, but some of these are, a lot of them are general fund but so it would be those that are both, but they're not the ones that are utility, as Mr. Bean is saying.
So only if it's 100% funded by the general fund? It's only those positions you want to have this analysis relate to?
No. If they're 100% funded by a utility, I wasn't looking at it. If they have a mechanism of general fund support.
Number 5, okay, provide the cost savings of reducing library funding to the 2015-2017 level. So, not what's proposed in the 17-19, but at the 15-17.
The savings of reducing that, not the increase that's proposed now, which I think is 208,000, I think.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I don't.
And just a heads up, one of the things, anytime we get involved with the library, we're just being careful that we're not, there's some outside fundraising that's done for the library, and we're careful that we don't merely turn around and then, somebody gives us a check for $20,000, we don't turn around and cut $20,000 out. But we'll give you the analysis.
You were making a point I wanted to make, and also, isn't 13-15 the year we actually absorbed the library as a full division?
No, 15-17. The start of the 15-17 budget was the start of them being here. 13-15 predated it was operated under a board of trustees at that point.
Right, so if we look at that increase between 15-17 and 13-15 is it becoming a full department, correct?
Right, but if I'm reading this right, what Mr. Mosby's asking for is the cost savings that if we take what's proposed for the 17-19 and we reduce library funding to the 15-17 level. Have I got that correct?
Yes, we did increase $559,000 from the 13-15 to 15-17 level.
Right.
Being it at 15-17 funding levels. I think it's a $208,000 increase we're looking at.
Okay.
Is what you're looking, so that, I kind of answered that one already, I think.
Yeah. Number 6, provide an explanation of the funding mechanism for the communications fund on 194. Provide the savings from eliminating 2 GIS positions shown on page 186. Okay, I think that's understood. Okay, here's one I definitely have a question on. Provide the savings that would be achieved by returning the city administrator, assistant city administrator, and all department heads that receive general fund revenues to their 2014 salaries with the same increases given to IBEW city employees. No page number. So that we would go back and we'd set them all at their 2014 level, and whatever the IBEW got in terms of percentage increases. Now, IBEW receives not only cost of living, but individually within their range, they have step increases. There's a range and a person. So to make that consistent, we're doing the same thing here with department heads. The normal movement within their range.
Yes.
Is okay, and then any increase, good. And
I believe that would answer public's question that people are inquiring about as well.
I can tell you for the city administrator, that's.
You went backwards, I know.
Yeah, it's gonna go the other way.
Mr. Mayor, before we move off that point, I just want to make a point for the record. I'm not saying don't get that information. I'm just not sure what you'll be able to do with that information, because there's some contracts that you're bound by, and you can't, unless someone agrees to reduce their income, you can't reduce it. So just know that.
Yes.
Right. Number 8, provide the savings from contracting out the building department, like Goleta and Guadalupe. Also provide the savings for converting to a self-certification process as the city of Bellflower had done. Provide the actual income and expenses for the building department for 14, 15, and 16. I don't believe that's enterprise accounting, or is it? Do you have enterprise accounting for building? No, but similar to
No, but we can
planning?
do the similar with planning, yes.
Okay, so we'll provide you the expense side. Number 9. The parks budget for 13-15 was 2 million, 15-17, 2.6, 17-19, 3.2. Provide a description of what changes. So, yeah, you got some of that,
A lot of that came up tonight, yes.
but you'd like it incorporated. It's, yeah, we have that work pretty well done. Number 10, provide the cost savings from eliminating the Economic Development Department and moving the Assistant City Administrator to administration, other than the savings from elimination of the positions above, on page 134. Number 11, in code enforcement and the budget.
You know, excuse me, I just wanted to clarify, I'm sorry, City Manager, but was that for the division or the department to include the whole department?
The department is what the word that was used here.
That is economic development, community development, planning, recreation, stormwater, code enforcement?
That would be the division, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Just one clarification.
Thank you for the catch. Thank you. In code enforcement, the budget in 13-15 was 109,000, 15-17, 203,000, 17-19 proposed for 375. The number of cases is projected to drop as follows: 15-16, 978, 917, 16-17, 925, 17-18, 775, 18-19, 775, all on page 85. What would be the impact of remaining at the 15-17 budget level with the reduced workload? And provide a breakdown of the costs in the stormwater category of the water utility on page 172. And finally, number 12, provide a list of each item and budget amount in the non-departmental. In 13-15, it was 1253,570, and 17-19, about 2 million. Got it. I think that's the clarification we needed. Thank you.
Councilmember Mosby, have your light on? Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. We've had discussion. With the information you have right now, let's vote. Okay, that passes 3-2. Okay. I guess we now move on to item number 11. Adoption of resolution number 6130, parentheses 17, approving prepayment of a portion of the unfunded actual liability to the City of Lompoc's Miscellaneous and Safety California Public Employees Retirement System. And Mr. Wilkie.
Good evening. I'll make this short. The CalPERS system in 15-17 made a change in the way that pension payments are made. They split the payments into two sections, normal cost and unfunded liability cost. They did it in 15-17 for safety plans. So for the 15-16 and 16-17 year, as part of the approved budget, we paid the unfunded liability as a lump sum in July, saving us approximately $75,000, $80,000 in the first year and a little bit more than that in the second year. For the 17-19 cycle, CalPERS has extended that program to all their plans, which includes the city's agency plan, which is a standalone plan for miscellaneous. So we have the same opportunity in 17-19 to do a prepayment of our unfunded liability on an annual basis as opposed to a 12 individual monthly payments. That would save us, between the two plans, actually the 5 plans, about $144,000 over the 2 years. The reason I'm bringing this to you now is that acting under the continuation resolution for the 15-17 budget, there's no authority to actually do the miscellaneous payment. So this request and recommendation to approve the resolution is to allow for that prepayment of the miscellaneous as well as the safety component, so we can save about 3.5% by not paying it on a monthly basis, but paying it on an annual basis. This doesn't change our amortization schedules. We are still paying on 30-year payment schedules for both of the main plans as well as the 4 smaller plans for safety. So, but this does save, like I said, about $144,000. And if you go out through the whole entire 30 years and we keep doing this, the savings becomes around $5 million over the 30 years. So it's since we do have resources within the benefit and insurance fund that have to be replenished by the end of the year, we are able to do this internal borrowing. So we're not able to invest this money at roughly 1%, but we're saving 3% on our PERS obligation and theoretically making 7% on what that money is at CalPERS for that whole entire year. So it's better to put it there and expect to get that 7% return and save in our budget the true hard cost savings of 144. So that's it in a nutshell. If you have any questions.
Any questions? Okay, we'll open this up for public comment. Seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to accept staff recommendation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Let's vote. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, written communication.
Nothing more than you've already received.
Okay, now we'll move on to item number 4. Item number 4 was pulled from the consent calendar. So who's going to take item number 4?
I will. I don't have it in front of me, but Councilmember Mosby was able to explain to me some of the questions he had on this item. This really truly shows you some of the deficiencies in our current system. That is one of the reasons why we're going to a new system. We have a PO mechanism, we have a PO department, purchasing department that processes our POs, but the antiquity of our finance system, the finance system and the PO system don't have an interaction that is automatic. So what happened with this particular PO is during the year, primarily it's used by urban forestry, and they don't normally have a spend on that PO more than $120,000, so that it doesn't need to come to council for approval. They go through the budgeting process, they go through the RFP process, and get solicitations, so we make sure we have their best price. But from the point of view of the PO, since we've never had to go over 125, has never come to council for approval. What happened in this particular fiscal year is typically it's used by urban forestry to do tree trimming in the right-of-way. We've had a substantial amount of tree damage because of the drought that parks saw a vital need to take care of some of the trees in the city, utilize that same contract to do that work under their budgeting authority and appropriations within parks. So no individual division was over budget or outside their appropriation limits, but the PO itself was exceeded. And the request here is to provide for that PO to be in excess of 125,000, which requires city council approval. What we're going to do in the future is to have a full RFP process like we have had and bring that to the council at the dollar amount that's totally possible to be done. And as we switched over to the new finance system this coming October, we'll be able to put that into the system. The system will be able to track every purchase off that PO, no matter where it's coming from, and trigger the any kind of triggers that need to say we're getting close to that total. So I'd like to say we were able to catch that on a manual basis, but this particular year we had more expenses than we expected through 2 different divisions that utilize the same PO. So apologize for that happening, but when we went through the PO process for the following year is when we discovered that we had this problem and brought it to your attention.
And I thank you for that. That's one of the reasons why I pulled it, because I didn't feel this was as a consent item. You know, this is considered routine. This is the first time I've seen this, but I know the level of confusion you must have. It's kind of, you know, your wife and your daughter are each having a credit card and you're not sure what's going on. And understanding what we've got.
I'll just pay the bill.
Well, this is a retroactive payment for fiscal year 16-17. So this is something that went a little further than
well, that's why I mentioned that.
anticipated, so-
I want to make it clear that each individual department had appropriations
Right.
adequate to pay for that service. What didn't happen was that particular PO had its level exceeded by having more than one division using it.
And this is another reason why we can't wait to get that great computer going, right?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
October is the conversion date, so we're getting very, very close.
Thank you.
Councilmember Osborne.
And this was the explanation I had wanted to not have to pull from
Yeah.
the consent calendar, so I appreciate that. And just to be clear, a lot of us pay our own credit card bill and don't depend on men to do it, so thank you.
Apologize.
And then men to do it, okay. Good. Okay, any other questions? Okay, public comment. No, seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment, bring it back to the council. I'd entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
I'll second.
It's been approved and seconded. Any discussion? Let's vote. Let's vote again. Go ahead and vote. Okay, that passes 5-0. Okay, oral communications. This is your opportunity to speak to us for up to 2 minutes on anything before this council. Seeing no one rise, we're going to close oral communication. Council requests, comments, and meeting reports. We'll start with Councilmember Vega.
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Osborne.
I, along with Councilmember Vega, attended League of Cities conference in Monterey, and that was covered by the city.
Okay. Councilmember Mosby.
Yeah, I went to, for the mayor and acting as mayor pro tem for the change of command ceremony for the 4th Space Launch Squadron. I also went as mayor pro tem for the mayor at the fly-in at the, and what a group of people over there that really love their planes, you know. And I did have some comments that I could follow up with, and I'd mentioned this with the city manager. While I was there, I had 3 people mention to me that we have deer on the runway and that we could do something to get the deer off the runway, so I did mention that. Also, yeah, maybe we can, anyhow. The other was the bus parking, and as I'd mentioned to the city manager as well, the Clean Air Express is parked in there on weekends, and it's pretty impacted on weekends, and several people made comments and said maybe we can find another place for them to go, because it's clustered up. People are parking in red zones and over curbs. And as I'd mentioned to him as well, a couple of the people mentioned they had leaky roofs in their hangars. So I told him I'd report out, and so done.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, as the council representative, I wanted to let you all know that I was at the Contract Compliance Committee meeting with Human Service Commissioner Barbara Holt and several members of the staff here. The staff will report that in the contract compliancy. Mr. Lynn handed out this piece of paper earlier, and I just wondered, you know, with a council consensus, if we could get a little kind of a report on this SB 35 and if it would behoove us to go ahead and submit a letter? I mean, if what I'm reading in here is happening, they're gonna do whatever they want here. Is that basically true? I mean, is it a big deal to have somebody look at this and bring a little small report back on it?
Yeah, I think it's appropriate, and my only question on that is, there's something in our handbook that says we cannot act on anything outside the purview of the city, so I want to make sure that when the staff report comes back, that indicates that this is or is not affecting the city, so.
This would be okay. This would comply with the handbook.
Okay, good, so, yeah, I'll give you a second on that, and we need a third.
I'll give you a third.
Okay, so, that's good.
And in fact, Mr. Mayor, not knowing exactly the timing of the bill, if the timing is such that we need to get a letter out earlier than the next time you meet, we're going to propose the letter and then bring back to you the fact the letter was done.
That'll be
Because
fine.
you have authority under the handbook to sign that letter if it needs to go out before the next meeting.
Okay, that'll be fine. Good, thanks. Anything else? Councilman Starbuck?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, and the other thing I'm reporting is I attended League of California Cities meeting in Santa Barbara. I guess it was last Friday, and the city did pay $35 for my meeting. And with that, this meeting is adjourned to the regular city council meeting of Tuesday, August 1st at 6:30 p.m. Thank you and good night.